Don't be creepy.
huge, tiny mistake.
Well, here we are again. Somehow still trying to make sense of the universe. Fuck the universe, I mean, trying to make sense of the Earth. Anyway, chat, I suppose we better get right to it. Buckle up those seatbelts, base fams. It's time for us to take a little ride through the unknown. We all discussed it, and you think that you should be able to have Jesus on a raptor every day? Wow. Well, I suppose we better start in the same place as usual. The United States. Oh, God. Alright, well, I guess we'll start with this show. This report here. This is from Scottsville, New York, where residents react to recent shooting, which led to, well, actually, I guess it wasn't, I'm not even sure if it's, you could call it a, I mean, someone was shot and killed. I don't know if you can call it a shooting, because it appears that it happened on their property.
We now know the name of the person who was fatally shot in Scottsville early Sunday morning. Additionally, deputies in Monroe County say they do have a person of interest in mind at this time, but would not state further about any charges that they're looking into. Isabel Garcia joins us in the studio with the latest developments. Isabel.
Yes, Teresa, Monroe County Sheriff's Office says the 43-year-old Kevin DeFlavis of Scottsville was shot in the front yard at a home on Main Street this weekend. Still, very little information is being given. Deputies continuing to cite a very active and complicated investigation. Deputies initially receiving a report about the shooting around 2:20 a.m. Sunday. Once on scene, MCSO says deputies located DeFlavis deceased on the front lawn of a property with multiple gunshot wounds. Deputies do have a person of interest that they've been speaking with. Under Sheriff Corey Brown and other MCSO deputies took time to walk down the stretch of Main Street earlier this afternoon. This to not only provide a visual presence, but also answer questions, talk with neighbors, etc. The main portion of...
Okay, all right, let's go on to this one. Let's go to this. This is from Cron 4, where 4 teens were shot in Hayward in separate incidents. I believe this is somewhere near the Bay Area in California.
Right, this is where the shooting happened, near the intersection right behind us. We actually got an update from police today about the condition of the 2 victims involved. We're being told the 18-year-old is still fighting for his life on life support.
We have no one in custody at this time, and the investigation is still very active and ongoing.
2 shootings in 2 days. The Hayward Police Department busy investigating the suspects involved. Last Thursday, 2 teenagers were struck by gunfire. Police say around 11 p.m. they were called to this intersection, Mission Boulevard and Industrial Parkway, about a shooting. The victim, a 17-year-old, calling 911, telling police he and his 18-year-old friend had been shot.
17-year-old sustained a gunshot wound, was treated at a local hospital and has since been released. 18-year-old victim sustained gunshot wounds as well, was transported to a local medical facility, and he is currently on life support as of today.
After being
Jesus. Well, just want to talk about this one again, as some more details have been made clear about this. This was also in New York, in Utica. I think we talked about this a couple of days ago. But family members are now calling for answers after that 13-year-old child was killed by police.
Turning now to the death of a 13-year-old boy at the hands of police. Body cam footage shows the moments leading up to the shooting in the city of Utica in upstate New York. Police say Nia Moonday ran from officers during a stop Friday night and pointed what appeared to be a gun at them. Michael George has our report, and we should warn you, these images are disturbing.
Utica police say they stopped 13-year-old Nia Moonday, a refugee from Myanmar, and another teen around 10:30 Friday night because the duo matched the description of robbery suspects.
Just pat you down and make sure you got no weapons on you.
Police body camera video shows Moonday running from the officers, who say he pointed what appeared to be a gun at them. After a brief chase, one officer wrestled Moonday to the ground, where police say a struggle ensued before another officer fired one shot and wounded him. Moonday died at the hospital. The alleged weapon later confirmed to be a pellet gun, which police say was designed to resemble a Glock 17.
Yo, careful, you're on camera.
We spoke exclusively to a witness who recorded this footage of the incident.
Oh my God, he just shot him.
She asked us to conceal her identity.
Do you believe the officer was justified in shooting?
No. No. Even when y'all laid him on the ground and was punching on him and stuff, that boy didn't fight back.
That sentiment was widely echoed at a community meeting Sunday as Utica residents demanded accountability from the mayor.
Why shoot him when he was already held down on the ground beaten? How cold-hearted you have to be to look at the parents of the victim and try to see empathize with the officers?
After the fiery meeting, Mayor Michael Galimi told us people in his city are entitled to feelings of anger, but added this.
In looking at the videos, I don't see anything out of necessarily order.
We also...
You don't see anything out of order? Weird. Really weird.
Spoke to Lupwe Do, a leader in Utica's sizable Karen community, an ethnic minority that fled persecution in Myanmar.
This is a very severe case, but there are a lot of minor cases that happen in the community here with police stopping each other with no justifications.
And people from all over this community have been coming here to leave candles at the spot where Moonday was shot. As for the officers involved, they're on paid leave pending the results of an investigation by the...
Who paid vacation for the cops who couldn't handle a 13-year-old without murdering him, and... Yeah, it's weird. Good old vacations. Cops commit crimes, get paid vacations. Meanwhile, everybody else, well, slightly different story. They didn't even punch him before he was shot. They were punching him before he was on the ground with like that one dude already punching him, surrounded by like 4 cops, and then the other cop. I saw the whole video. They edited it, but now that it's come out, you can see that the cop shoots him while he's on the, basically puts the gun up to his chest and just fires. Like point blank, probably less than a foot away. Is what you might call an execution. May you please have one emotional support character. Yes. Yes, I suppose you do deserve that. Okay, now we're gonna move on to politics. First, let's look at this. This is out of CBS News from 12 hours ago. According to a poll, 72% of voters don't think that Biden should be running for president.
All right, we're going to begin this morning with the continuing fallout from President Biden's very shaky debate performance last week. New CBS News polling reveals a growing number of voters believe Biden should not run for president and are concerned over his cognitive health. 72% of registered voters feel Biden does not have the cognitive health that is needed to serve. So over the weekend, some Democratic lawmakers rallied behind the president, including Maryland Governor Wes Moore, who says that he thinks both candidates struggled.
I don't think either candidate had a very good night on the debate night.
Hold on. We don't need to hear what he has to say right now.
A little bit more. So, Aaron, as you know, right after the debate, I think, a number of campaign surrogates had a hard time putting a silver lining on that performance. Since then, they've kind of fine-tuned the messaging.
No comment, Chick CC just rated with 9 viewers on Twitch. Wow, thank you, No Comment Chick, for the raid. Much appreciated. I think that's the first time that notification has gone off since I actually fixed it and got it working. So thank you. Good to see all you NCC viewers.
This was a bad 90 minutes for Joe Biden, but they want voters to compare it to the 3.5 years preceding it from his term, his record, and some of the bills he's been able to get through. But the campaign, all indications show that they are moving forward. Right after the debate, they had a rally in North Carolina, several fundraisers in the New York area, and yesterday is when he arrived in Camp David for what sources are saying was a pre-planned meeting with his family, and sources also tell CBS News that he was encouraged by his family members to stay in this race, despite some of the calls coming from Democrats, strategists, unnamed lawmakers over the weekend. But this will be a sticking point for his campaign, as age was already a factor for people to maybe doubt their vote for Joe Biden going into this, and that seems to have only increased, as shown in our CBS News polling.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk a little bit more about that. Polling shows that voters widely believe that in the debate, Donald Trump, presented his ideas more clearly, appeared more presidential, inspired more confidence. And this is all despite the fact that voters overall actually thought that he was less truthful than President Biden. So it sort of begs the question, how important is truthfulness to the voters?
Well, this is the unique...
How important is truthfulness to the voters? That's a great question. I mean, if we look at any, sizable swath of the MAGA population, if you will, I mean, we can clearly see that the truth isn't that important. It's just really about making sure that Donald Trump is is back in the office, right? How many times have they been confronted with the truth at different rallies or whatever else and then just completely ignored it? Omega Star got first. Well done, Omega Star. Well done. I think second and third are still available for anybody else who's watching on Twitch. Only one, what do you call it? It's only one single space dollar, which you get for just watching the channel. Ooh, Princess Monocle just got in there with second. Looks like NCC is now raiding on YouTube too. Hey, thanks for the raid, NCC. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Okay. So yeah, I mean that first figure was really the one I wanted to look at. I mean, 72%. I mean, obviously some portion of that 72% is Trump voters, but the fact is it's not a good number, right? And it's the lowest, he's got the lowest approval rating right now since Eisenhower for an incumbent president that's attempting to run again. Which is like, what, like in the last 70 years or something? Okay, now let's go to this one. This was, who, I can't remember which person at the State Department had to answer this question, but they were asked, what is the current, department, has to say about the debate performance. Oh my god, Looney Tunes just gifted a tier 1 sub to No Comment Chick. Hey, NCC now just got a free sub. Now I have access to some sweet, sweet galactic emotes.
Yeah, just moving to a slightly separate subject. Sure. Just since this is the first briefing you've had since the debate on Thursday, there's obviously been a lot of responses over the president's performance. I know this isn't the White House, but I also want to note that the secretary doesn't have any events this week where we'll have a chance to ask him directly. So this is a forum to try and ask. And he was asked about this morning, not by a journalist, I should say, at Brookings Institution, about, you know, globally there has been as well as domestically, there has been some response to the president's performance on the debate stage. It's raised, you know, raising some questions about his ability to lead, to respond to crises. You know, from this building's point of view, is there anything you want to say in response to that?
I think Secretary Blinken laid out our point of view on this pretty clearly, and so I would just echo what he said. And to give just a snippet, the Secretary was pretty clear and succinct that the world and world leaders know the president. They know the policies that he pursues and he champions, and they like and believe in the policies that we're pursuing. Next week, the
world leaders are not going to be voting in this election. Just going to point that out to Vedant. I don't mean to point out the obvious to the poor guy. NCC wasn't subscribed yet. Ah, yes. Well, now you have. 2 more support characters? My god. How do we have this many likes already? We're only 30 minutes in. That's another 16. What is this, a weighted die? What's happening? 5. And what is that? 11. 5 and 11. Okay. Remember that. But let's move on to the next video. This is from CBS News from 3 hours ago, where Democratic voters respond to Biden's debate performance. All right, what was it again? 5 and 11? Yeah, that was it.
High-profile Democrats are sticking with President Biden in the wake of last week's debate. Maryland Governor Wes Moore says he does not foresee the president leaving the race. We're also hearing from Democratic voters about what they thought about that showdown. Shauna Mizell joins us now from Milwaukee. Shauna, thanks for being here. You spoke with Governor Moore about the debate. What did he say?
Bob, good evening. It's great to be with you. That's absolutely right. Governor Wes Moore in the state of Wisconsin over the weekend, immediately after the debate. He was actually supposed to be here for black voter outreach on behalf of the Biden campaign, but a lot of his visit this weekend was under the shadow of Biden's lackluster debate performance. Let's take a listen to what he told me about the president's performance over the weekend.
I think it actually is powerful, the fact that it has come off something that people have said, and even the president has acknowledged, all of us acknowledged, was not a great debate performance. Because I think the president has shown something that all of us knew about him, is that, is that when you get knocked down, you get back up and you keep on fighting.
So Moore, like a lot of other Democrats, really expressing optimism and confidence despite Biden's performance at the debate on Thursday.
Shauna, you've also been speaking with voters in Wisconsin.
Yeah, let's
Are
listen
they
to some
sticking
voters,
with President
please.
Biden, those Democrats?
You said voters. Give me the voters.
I spoke to a few voters over the weekend, and they really seem to repeat the same lines that we heard from Moore and other Democrats. They're chalking it up to a bad night. Let's take a listen.
Everybody's going to have a down day as well as an up day, and I don't rest whether he was good or bad or shouldn't be on the ticket anymore or whatever, because he had a bad day. We don't know what caused that day to be like it was, but we know he has the ability to serve the country.
That's one debate. That does not define who President Biden is. We all have off days, but that doesn't.
I feel like these quote-unquote voters were very hand-picked. I could be wrong, but I get a weird vibe from these two. They're just... I'm trying to put my finger on what it is exactly, but it genuinely feels like they knew what they were gonna get from them before they even put him in front of the camera. Now, I will say this, I personally also talked to other people who voted Democrat in 2020, and they're saying the exact opposite, right? They're saying, I was really disappointed by this. I felt like I had less confidence after having watched it. Somebody told me they literally turned off the debate because of how much of a train wreck it was, right? And I think that it's with a month and a half to go until the delegation, right? I think we need to stop playing this sort of, oh, he's gonna get back up on that horse game, like the cheer on Joe thing. It's like, you can do it, Grandpa, and it's like, we've been doing that for the last year and a half, I want to say. And a performance like this doesn't give people a lot to hold on to, a lot to root for, right? And I'm not saying that he hasn't had some good policies here at home in the United States, but I think we all know that there's a lot of criticisms that I personally have, and I know that others have, that are completely valid. Problem is if we want even to entertain the idea of him potentially being replaced, we need to start talking seriously about who it is we're going to replace him with, right? Who's got the numbers, who's actually got the ability to speak to the voters that you need to get out there for you to help get out the vote. Me personally, I think that's Bernie Sanders, even though he's not putting his hat in the ring. I really do. Everybody else, I feel, has a lot of problems, right? The last polls that I looked at personally, from Whitmer to Harris, Newsom, all these people were behind against Trump by mostly single-digit points, but that's the same situation that Biden was in, and now he's approaching I think, nearly double-digit points. Not quite. I think it's like 8 points, but it's bad. It's bad. And they did this one early, right? They did this early. They changed everything around to try and boost the campaign, right? It was all agreed upon and set forth by the Biden campaign to help boost the lackluster numbers that he's already been having. And it did the opposite of what they were hoping. And I just, the strategy all just feels wrong. And it gives me a lot of pause, a lot of concern. Because I personally don't want to see Donald Trump back in office. That's that's a fact. Write that down. Oh, God. It's just annoying to see them trying to backfill behind the mistake and be like, oh, he's fine. He's going to get back up on the horse. What horse? He can't even stay on a bike. All right, let's quickly look at this just to end talking about the actual, oh, Megastar wants me to hydrate. Hold on, where's my drink? Thank you. Hydration is key. Just gonna look at this where Joe Biden completely ignored reporters' questions after coming off of the, whatever you call this stupid helicopter. Heli 1. What, are you saying that somehow Joe Biden is the same thing as Chumbawamba? Is that what you're saying to me right now? Whoa. What just happened? Oh, God. You can kind of hear them yelling in the background. What the fuck is happening? Pause. Jesus Christ. Okay, well, my browser just went completely rogue.
I mean, aside from it being a horror show.
Wait, stop, Sam, stop.
It is.
So yeah, he completely walked past the reporters who were trying to, ask questions, probably regarding the debate, considering the current climate in the media. What the fuck is happening? That's just Joe and fam ignoring the press. Rogue browser. Is it relatable? I'm glad. I like to be relatable sometimes, at least. Alright, now let's, wait. Yeah, let's finish talking about the election here, or at least the debate as it relates to the election, and so on, with this from the Majority Report. This popped up in my feed a few hours ago, where top Democrat claims serious talks over dropping Biden.
I mean, aside from it being a horror show, it is fascinating what's going on here, because I would say there's really like 2 or 3 categories of people associated with this. One category, I think, is just there's a lot of concern trolling. There's another category where people who are like realizing maybe the Democrats are not putting their best foot forward in this instance. Like, I think the calculation has...
Which is not some sort of a conspiracy, right? They did the same thing with Hillary, right? And it's just it's not a wild theory. GNN has the cocoa. Do I have the cocoa? I don't know if I don't Rashida Tlaib would be based, that she would make Israel stop. I'm sure she would. I'm not even sure if I could put my support behind Rashida Tlaib. Not based upon ideology in any way. But the fact is she has no momentum. She has, I don't even know where she would poll. But I, when I think Rashida Tlaib, I just think about how many people in the United States would sour at that idea, right? I'm not one of them. In terms of if you were to tell me she had a shot, right, of actually winning, I'd be all for it. Everything that she's about in Congress, that she, votes for, espouses, I'm all about it. But God, I just want us to put somebody in there who's going to be able to also win. Because it can't be an art project, right? It can't just be we voted for the person that we most liked or that we most agreed with, right? I'm not saying that I don't want it to be like that. It's just that's not how you seize power. Sorry, I got distracted by this.
And up until the debate, that the cost associated with jettisoning an incumbent, just generically speaking, an incumbent has some strength. And the cost associated with that in terms of is Kamala Harris up to the job? If she isn't, could you possibly bypass her? All of those questions, would it be ugly at the convention? All of those questions outweighed.
That's something I hadn't even considered, but it's a great point to make that if this does wind up getting to the point where Biden were to step down, I think that the automatic, what do you want to call it? The heir presumptive, if you will, which sounds gross in the context of democracy, but I do believe that that's exactly who they would turn to and say, well, you're the vice president. The president has stepped down. It's your turn now, Kamala.
The need, it seemed, to replace Biden. The debate basically not only reignited that debate, but changed the equation for people based upon the way that Biden presented himself. Now,
it changed our thoughts. I think that we were more dismissive of that Wall Street Journal report, maybe, or at least I was, about his cognition, because it's obviously a Murdoch paper. This changed the calculation.
Well, there's also the sourcing in there, too.
The sourcing was odd, and then we saw what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on, let me move this forward. Can't watch this whole thing. Where did I? Yeah. Right around here.
It's just his family and
a 185-year-old spring chicken advisor.
His former chief of staff, right? I think it was Kaufman. They're the only people he listens to. But here is Representative Jamie Raskin on MSNBC yesterday answering about this question.
Around the future of the Democratic Party with Joe Biden as the presidential candidate. You are a thinker. Our viewers respect you as such. Tell me your thinking.
Well, I mean, this is what a real political party looks like, and this is what a real political party does. But obviously, there was a big problem with Joe Biden's debate performance, and there's also just a tremendous reservoir of affection and love for Joe Biden in our party. And so this makes it a difficult situation for everybody, but there are very honest and serious and rigorous conversations taking place at every level of our party because it is a political party and we have differences of point of view. I mean, if you compare that to the non-existent dialogue and conversation that took place in the Republican Party after Donald Trump's criminal conviction on 34 counts. It's remarkable. And so we're having a serious conversation about what to do. One thing I can tell you is that regardless of what President Biden decides, our party is going to be unified, and our party also needs him at the very.
Thanks for the bits, Donald James. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. And you gigantified an emote. Impressive. Keeping the Galactic news running. What was I saying? Oh, I just found it interesting to hear Jamie Raskin talking about all of this, considering, you know, while he's to the left of Joe Biden, he's still very pro-Israel and all this stuff. He wasn't the person I would expect to come out and be talking about all this. Hey, thanks for the follow, Starry VR.
Center of our deliberations and our campaign. And so whether he's the candidate or someone else is the candidate, he is going to be the keynote speaker at our convention. He will be the figure that we rally around to move forward and beat the forces of authoritarianism and reaction in the country.
All right, I want to point out something he said there at the end. That he will still be the central figure. There was a timeline of this. The Friday, Saturday after the debate, there was the New York Times editorial board that led the way and said he needs to step down. Then the Wall Street Journal editorial board did. Then the Chicago Tribune. Then the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He needs the state of Georgia. Then the editor of the New Yorker. Then you have Jamie Raskin going on there. And you have Democrats speaking to NBC off the record, or aides saying they've heard conversations with Pelosi, with Clyburn, with Hakeem Jeffries that have expressed private concerns about Biden's ability and his mental acumen at this point, or acuity. So they're all phrasing it in the exact same way, and it's buried in the Times articles, it's buried in these NBC articles, that it will be Biden's decision if he can walk away from this and say that he's completed his job and he's done.
Exactly. It really, that's where we're at right now. We have to somehow convince Biden that he should not be running. Which I think some portion of us have actually been trying to do for a while. But somehow, and I've heard it put, essentially, like, we gotta sweeten the deal, like, make him feel like it's a big W for him to walk away somehow, and that there's, it just, what's it like? I'm trying to think. I'm lacking analogies right now, Chad. I'm sorry. I thought I was gonna have a good one, and I'm drawing blanks. You're sure that some are trying to convince Jill Biden to convince Joe? Could be. I'm sure there's got to be some people out there doing that right now, but I also want. Honestly, we need to start discussing, like I've been saying, in the media more than anything, is like, who would we replace him with, right? Who's ready to step up and actually has the gusto to take down Donald Trump? That's now my focus, because I'm positive he needs to step down. Whether or not that will happen is completely up to him, right? And whether or not people manage to convince him one way or the other. Everybody's talking about Hurricane Beryl in here getting ahead of me. We haven't even got into the environmental news yet. I think you all know we do American news first. We are a bunch of videos away from that. But we will be getting to it eventually. It's certainly on the list. We've been talking about it as it heads in the direction of land for what, like, not quite a week, but like 5 days or something like that. All right. Still got some stuff to talk about, politics related, Supreme Court related. First of those things, we're going to talk about Steve Bannon. Oh, God. Excuse me. We're going to talk about Steve Bannon. As I'm sure most people are familiar with this man. He has, in fact, earlier today, surrendered himself to federal prison to serve a 4-month sentence on his contempt of court charges.
How we doing, gentlemen?
You know what I love this guy was involved in trying to subvert democracy and all that. He gets 4 months. Meanwhile, you know, like, you know, like people, not even just teens, but people in general, normal human beings, you know, commit tiny infractions and and you know, spend way more time in jail than 4 months. You know, how many people are still sitting in prison for like marijuana related crimes? Like, it's ridiculous. People have been sentenced to life for stealing candy bars. Exactly. We saw a 13-year-old child get gunned down for running from police earlier. Hey, but this is the society that we live in.
Guys, hey. We will love you. We will build this. We will build this. I am proud of going to prison. Are you going to get the I am proud to go to.
That is true, BB. Joe Biden did in fact pardon some of those people. Not all of them, but a large portion. I can't remember exactly what percentage of them were released from prison, but certainly was one of the better things he's done at home in the United States, for sure. It's on the list.
If this is what it takes to stand up to tyranny, if this is what it takes to stand up to the Garland corrupt criminal DOJ.
Whoopsies. What just happened? Why? What are you doing? Do not open up AP's website. That is highly offensive. Go back. What? Oh, God. Okay, there we go. Fixed it. Good God. That greasy criminal should be in jail for way longer than 4 months. Yeah. All right. Now let's go to this. Oh, actually, we got one more Bannon surrender video. Where's... Oh, God. You have 40... We have 40 likes now?
Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, you're watching CBS News.
40 likes before an hour in? This is insane. This is crazy, people. What is going on? Was that 7? 7. Whoa, we just hit 40 viewers. I think that might be the highest we've ever had.
News 24/7, where we know we are seeing history write itself in real time. Think about it today. Well, Donald Trump gets a ruling from the Supreme Court that he celebrates today. One of his men who helped get Trump to the White House is going to the big house. We're talking, of course, about former Trump aide Steve Bannon. He just reported to federal prison today in Connecticut. So let's bring in CBS News correspondent Nikki Batiste live in Danbury, Connecticut. Okay, so Steve Bannon will have dinner in prison tonight. He wanted to stay out of prison, but ultimately he had to report what will happen to him tonight behind bars and how did he get here.
Hi, Reed. Like you mentioned, Steve Bannon checked into this prison here in Danbury, Connecticut around noon today. He spoke with reporters and about 25 supporters, 10 protesters just before he went in. He just said over and over again he's proud to go to prison, essentially if it means Donald Trump might be elected again. He is in this facility being treated like...
Steve Bannon genuinely views himself as a martyr, right? Like, this guy is a Christian martyr. That's how he views himself. Like, he's out there... He's willing to sacrifice for the cause if you will. And this guy is genuinely dangerous. Should be in prison for much longer than 4 months, if you ask me, but I'm not a judge, or a lawyer, for that matter. Just seems weird. Okay. He's doing all this for us. Yeah, exactly. For us to live under theocratic rule? And, well, theogarchic? Whatever the word is. Let's go on to talking about Supreme Court. If you're not familiar, last week, Supreme Court laid down multiple rulings on some landmark cases that were all very, very much leaning and on the side of big business, on the side of taking away people's civil rights, on the side of just pure lunacy. And today, to start the week, they decided that, in fact, Donald Trump has broad immunity. He can do whatever he wants as long as he claims it's an official act. Shit is totally not
illegal.
In a historic ruling, the Supreme Court found that former presidents have broad immunity from criminal prosecution. The decision in the case of former President Donald Trump is an additional delay in his prosecution on charges he interfered with the outcome of the 2020 election. And because it's going to require more work done by the lower courts, it makes it quite unlikely that any trial for the former president could take place before the November election. The decision found that official acts have some sort of immunity, while unofficial acts have no immunity.
Yeah, what is an official act? What is an unofficial act? You know what? Supreme Court doesn't know. They've decided to allow lower courts to decide what that entails. Use their judgment on that, I guess. You know, that would be too much for them to figure out, of course. That would be too much. Let's move on from the AP and let Democracy Now! Help us understand further some of the ramifications of all of this.
Today's the final day of the U.S. Supreme Court's current term. We look now at several major rulings from the court's conservative supermajority. In a 6-3...
I just realized I didn't even know that it was like today was the last day of their term. That makes sense why they're just handing down all these fucking rulings. They are just trying to, just flood us with garbage.
Friday, the court approved a power grab by corporate interests who want to strip federal agencies of their authority to regulate public health, the climate, environment, worker protections, food and drug safety, and more. The court struck down 4 decades of a precedent known as the Chevron Doctrine that stems from a Reagan-era ruling called Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council, which establishes that...
Sorry, I forgot that they talked about the other rulings. We already discussed the Chevron ruling. We discussed the Grants Pass ruling and the... what was the third one that they did last week? Can't even remember now.
Every American in this country, unquote. Meanwhile, Thursday, the justices voted 5-4 to block the Environmental Protection Agency's Good Neighbor Plan, which allows the EPA to regulate air pollution that drifts across state lines. In a statement, Earth Justice wrote, quote, the court's order puts thousands of lives at risk, forces down...
If the EPA isn't allowed to regulate that, who regulates it? Nobody, right? That's basically what that means. It means that nobody regulates it. Wild.
States to regulate their...
Because how do you regulate from inside of a state what another state is doing? How could you possibly? I'm no legal scholar, but that doesn't. The math ain't mathin'.
More tightly and tells big polluters that it's open season on our environmental laws, unquote. The Supreme Court had to issue a corrected version of its opinion in the case after Justice Neil Gorsuch confused the air pollutant at issue, which is nitrogen oxide, with nitrous oxide, which is continually referred to in the decision. Nitrous oxide is...
Wow. That right there, in that one particular instance, lies the very reason why the Chevron doctrine exists. Okay? Literally, that is the epitome of why it is the Chevron doctrine existed in the first place. This is why we defer to experts. This is why we don't ask judges, hey, what's your opinion on science? He can't even decide. He can't determine between nitrogen and nitrous oxide. Well, I would argue you probably can't do, you could probably extrapolate that over the rest of the decisions that you're all planning on making on environmental and technologically related issues. I think that it just makes it pretty obvious that you people are just not competent to do such things, considering you went to school for not that.
Laughing gas, that dentists administer.
Yeah, no kidding.
He said this more than 5 times in his opinion. But this is no laughing matter. This all comes as the 2 years after the Supreme Court gutted Roe v. Wade in its Dobbs ruling and before today's highly anticipated ruling on former President Donald Trump's bid for immunity from his federal indictment for trying to subvert the 2020 election and stay in power. For more, we're joined by 2 guests. Ali Mistal is the nation's justice correspondent, author of Allow Me to Retort, a Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution. His new piece headline, We Just Witnessed the Biggest Supreme Court Power Grab Since 1803. And Mustafa Ali is the former head of the Environmental Justice Program at the Environmental Protection Agency, now Executive Vice President of National Wildlife Federation and CEO of Revitalization Strategies. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Mustafa Ali, let's begin with you. Let's talk about Chevron. For people who are not following this day and night, explain the significance of this decision.
Please.
Well, this decision actually weakens our protections in relationship to clean air and clean water and the land. It says that the expertise that exists inside of federal agencies, those toxicologists, biologists, the others who have spent their life learning and then being able to help to make sure that our country is protected, are no longer valuable. It says that those who are in the courts now get to make the final decision if you are able to breathe clean air, to drink clean water, or to be able to make sure that the land that you're walking on or growing food in, it will be safe enough. This is a very devastating decision that was made. It should have had a warning label on it that said that the following actions are both deadly for both the democracy, for our economy, and for the health of both wildlife.
Yeah, it's deadly for the future of humanity, especially as it exists in the United States. But let's be real, what the United States does often affects the whole world, just because due to how much business it is that we do, how much emissions we emit, all of these things. And now we're just leaving it up to a supermajority of conservative Supreme Court justices. I'm sure nothing can go wrong with that.
Court Justice Clarence Thomas changed his position on Chevron, one of America's most significant regulatory doctrines, after his wife reportedly accepted secret payments from a shadowy conservative network pushing for the change. Thomas's shift also came while he was receiving lavish gifts from a billionaire linked to other groups criticizing the same doctrine, which is now headed back to the High Court, they were writing. The lever notes the so-called Chevron deference doctrine stipulates that the executive branch, not the federal courts, has the power to interpret laws passed by Congress in certain circumstances. Can you talk about this connection and your overall response? Because it's not only about the environment.
Yeah, so this goes to a larger Republican conservative shift on the issue. You brought up the initial Chevron decision in 1984. Let's remember that was a conservative decision. Chevron was championed by the conservative Svengali Antonin Scalia as one of the better decisions to ever come out of the Supreme Court. And the reason why it was a conservative decision in the 80s and trumpeted by conservatives in the 1980s is because conservatives believed that they were more likely than not to hold control over the executive branch. Remember, this is during the Reagan era, right? This is when Reagan looked unbeatable. This is when George H.W. Bush would succeed him, right? So they thought that they would control the executive branch and thus be able to deregulate the environment, worker safety, health safety, civil rights. They thought they could deregulate through
From
the
outside the
structures of the
Supreme
executive
Court.
branch.
Right.
And so they loved Chevron because it kept what they thought were liberal activist judges out of their way. Fast forward 40 years and what's happened? Well, it's actually relatively hard for Republicans and conservatives to ensure long-term control over the executive branch, but it's relatively easy for them now that they have this supermajority on the Supreme Court to control regulation through the courts for the next 20 or 30 years. And so that's why Thomas, the
How is
rest of
this
the
where we are
conservatives
right now?
have flipped on this issue. Remember, Chevron, again, if you go back to 1984, this was a decision trumpeted by the then Reagan EPA head, who was Neil.
Officially, Jerry, officially, I feel like that started a little bit before today, but you're right. We're putting the last nails in the coffin right now, it feels like.
Gorsuch's mom, right? So Neil Gorsuch's mom won at Chevron in the 80s when she was in control of the executive branch. Now that Neil Gorsuch is one of the people in control of the Supreme Court, all of a sudden, no, they don't want Chevron anymore. They want the courts to have the say. And so to roll it all back together, and I agree with everything Mustafa has said, but you got to remember, when we're talking about a power grab, who is the power coming from? We know where it's going to. We know it's going to the conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court. But who is it coming from? Because a lot of conservatives and Republicans are trying to gaslight people and tell them, well, we're just taking power from unelected bureaucrats at the EPA and giving it to unelected bureaucrats on the Supreme Court. No. They're taking power from you. They're taking power from the voters.
Seriously, though, I would much rather have people who are actual experts in the things that they are meant to regulate be regulating those things than people who just have a vague, not even superficial understanding of most of these things. I mean, who was it again? They just said Neil Gorsuch couldn't even remember the difference between nitrogen and nitrous oxide. I mean, pal, we got we got people for this. Like, I'm not confident in the people on the Supreme Court being able to learn, I don't know, like nuclear physics overnight or ever, to be honest. I mean, that's just not their expertise. These people are not, they're not scientists, mathematicians, anything like that. They're glorified English majors, right? They read really good. Their reading comprehension is really good, right? But for them to be able to, I don't know, go beyond anything in that very niche part of things, and then to start making these kinds of, no, I don't know why we would go back on 50 years of, because that's how long it's been around. I think the Chevron doctrine, like he was saying, is like in the 70s or 80s. It's like 50 years of that existing, and now suddenly just, no, it's gone. We were wrong about science. We should have elderly Supreme Court justices deciding the future. Is it 40 years? Okay. So it was the 80s. All right. What do we do? Okay. Yeah, let's go to this one. This is probably not going to be very shocking to anyone. It certainly wasn't shocking to me. And I honestly, in some way, this is something I was almost reveling in, even though I know it's not good for people in South Carolina, necessarily. Although maybe it'll wake some people up to what the Republican Party is. Although I have very low expectations on that one. But this is from the Associated Press from 12 hours ago, where they reported that Republican South Carolina voters have now kicked out all Republican women from the primary.
Former President Donald Trump is likely considering...
I'll deal with that later.
This may be the last time I get to come up here.
Oh, it's so sad.
Which is kind of sad. Which one of you will step up to the plate?
Which plate?
And take over what I've been doing for the last 12 years?
South Carolina's Senate is about to lose. It's only 3 Republican women. Republican primary voters booted all 3 women, Senators Sandy Senn, Penry Gustafson, and Katrina Shealy, who took on their party to stop a total abortion ban from passing in South Carolina last year.
Whoopsies.
They were part of the sister senators that included 2 Democrats who joined them in opposing the ban.
I've read billboards that said I was a baby killer. I would never hurt a child. You know, the...
Oh my god, it is so hard to have any sympathy for them in this moment because this is what their party represents. And for you to be pearl clutching, literally, you can see it in that moment. She literally clutched her pearls.
Said I was a baby killer.
Well, she's not wearing pearls,
I would
but
never hurt.
she's making the motion to clutch for something. She just didn't happen to be wearing the pearls, unfortunately. But yes, the leopard face, the face-eating party, leopard-eating faces, I forget them. Yes, they have in fact eaten more faces. And it's just like, what were you expecting? This is the thing that every Republican is constantly saying, oh, baby killer, baby killer. And now she's like, oh, where is this coming from? I've never heard this language before. I'm so shocked.
A child. You know, the one thing I did was I was looking out for women.
Oh my God,
I was looking out for girls and, you know, the future of South Carolina.
Their vote against the ban attracted international media attention, but it also brought on the ire of those against abortion.
When you're on CNN and you're on MSNBC and you're on the front page of the New York Times and the front page of the Washington Post, you're repeatedly sticking your finger in the eye of a lot of conservative folks.
All 5.
Sticking the finger in the eye of conservative folks, aka standing up for the rights of women to access health care.
The sister senators received the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award last year for people who risk their careers for the greater good.
We weren't allowed to bring our Profile and Courage Award into the chamber because it's too controversial.
Oh, no.
But here it is, and it's beautiful, and I'm proud of it. And all of these sister senators here with me, we're not ashamed to be called sister senators. We're not ashamed of anything we did.
Oh, the leopards eating faces party strikes again. Good God. What I take from that is I genuinely hope some women in South Carolina, in fact more than some, but that's once again probably being too optimistic, hope they realize that this is exactly what the Republican Party represents. Now, let's look at some more nonsense caused by Republicans. This is out of I think this is near Houston in Texas. This is involving a charter school by the name of Katy ISD, which has now enacted a new gender policy, which forces the schools to notify parents immediately if their child happens to in any way mention that they might identify as a different gender than what is what's the word given to them at birth. Good old charter schools.
We're now getting a clearer idea of the impact of KDISD's controversial new gender policy, which requires parents to be notified if students identify themselves as transgender.
At least one student has dropped out, and now as another district, including Conroe ISD, explore the same policies, he's sharing his reasons why. Arpuja Lodia has his story.
I was the president of the Dungeons & Dragons Club.
This 17-year-old, who has won awards for his poetry and artwork, is a high school dropout.
I miss a lot of my friends. I tried online school for a little bit. Not my style. Too much ADHD. Too much. Simply too much.
Cade is transgender.
I think for a long time I had known that I wasn't a girl, and I just didn't want to open that can of worms. But the surprise was how good it felt to be authentic.
When he was 14, a freshman at Maid Creek High, he told his parents, friends, and some teachers. They were all supportive. Then it all changed.
How many more of us have to die before you realize your policies are killing us?
Last August, KDISD narrowly passed a controversial gender policy that requires district staff to inform parents if students identify themselves as transgender. Students are required to use restrooms and...
This is a disturbing trend that just seems to keep happening over and over again.
Locker rooms that align with their sex assigned at birth.
I've never even seen the inside of my school's restrooms because I'm afraid of getting in trouble for being myself. I'm afraid of
Cade was one of close to 100 people to take to the podium against the policy.
Thank you for your time, Mrs. President.
Thank you. At the end of the night, after everyone opened their hearts and told these people about the impacts of what they were going to do, they did it anyway. And
the policy eventually...
You know, it's good to see how much support he gets from the other students. It's unfortunate that the faculty and the school board will be... well, I can't speak for the whole faculty, but the school board itself is voting for this, so... You know, it's unfortunate that they're failing him in this, and the rest of the transgender community.
By a 4-3 vote, with board members saying it informs parents and protects teachers. The day after, Cade says he was stopped by his Spanish teacher.
She held me up at the door and pointed at my legal name on the roster and said, "We're going back to this one now, okay?"
Oh, we're going back to this one now. Interesting. For what reason? Is there any particular reason why that's important? Wild. Just wild. This place is receiving federal and state tax dollars. All right, now let's talk about... Wait, how far am I in right now? An hour 19. How is this possible? We haven't even gotten to the environment yet. Oh boy. This might be a long one. Alright, let's go to this. As this is a developing situation, feels important for us to be aware of. This is from CBS News from 10 hours ago. According to them, a summer wave of COVID-19 is hitting the United States.
So, just in time to crash your summer plans, cases of COVID are on the rise across the U.S. as a new variant spreads. Although individual cases are no longer being counted, the CDC says that infections are growing or likely growing in 43 states. And this comes as the agency, just last week, recommended that everyone 6 months and older should get an updated vaccine.
So for more on the summer surge, I want to bring in Dr. William Schaffner. He's a professor of medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. Good to see you again, doctor. So what's going on? Where?
Okay, just wanted to at least show that map. The recommendation by the doctor is that if you haven't gotten vaccinated in the last since the last update, that it might be a good idea for you to get vaccinated if you are in one of the immunosuppressed and or are elderly. He strongly suggests you to get vaccinated again, so on and so forth. You're wondering what mask you should wear still? I say just go painter's mask, right? Full on respirator, right? That's just me, though. It might be a little bit much for some. Okay. What next? Oh, I found this story to be interesting. In fact, I wasn't even sure where to put this for multiple reasons. But I just decided to stick it here. This is a story apparently from 10 hours ago where, according to CBS News, Mall of America is now adding facial recognition technology. Is it Minority Report already?
The Mall of America is adding a new high-tech layer of security to help keep shoppers safe. The Minnesota Mega Mall will begin using facial recognition technology after a series of recent gun-related incidents. Now, security teams have installed cameras with the ability to map faces and detect potential threats. It's the same software that is already being widely used in airports, arenas, and other public spaces. So I want to bring in the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer, for more on this. Jamil, tell me more about how the software works and what happens to the data once it's collected.
Sure. Well, Anne-Marie, the way this software works is that it scans the crowd, tries to identify, one, what is a face, what's not a face, and then second, is that face somebody of interest to the Mall of the American security? Is it somebody that's had issues there at the mall before, somebody who's got a warrant out for their arrest or the like? And once it's done that, it then passes it on to a human for 3 layers of review. Now, no data is stored if there's no identification. However, if a person of interest is identified, then mall security reviews it through 3 layers of human review. And then ultimately, if there's a need, sends an officer down to have a conversation with that person and see what's going on there.
So, you know, when we started talking about facial recognition being used for security purposes, there was a lot of talk about whether or not there was biases sort of baked into the software, that the programming often misidentified visible minorities. I mean, should that be a concern?
Well, absolutely. You know, there's this question of bias in algorithms and the like. It's a lot of things that we've talked about recently with the AI revolution that we've seen just in the last year and a half. And so this is an issue that's well understood in the technology space. And what it requires software manufacturers and investors in the software to invest and bake in trust, safety, and security into the software they're deploying.
Oh, they didn't bake it long enough. That's the problem. They're using one of those easy oven bakes with the light bulb to help cook the upside down pineapple cake. That must be it. That's what it is. I get it now. I just honestly, me personally, I think this is a dumb idea. It makes me feel like I'm genuinely living inside of the Minority Report. I don't know if anybody's seen that fucking movie. But yeah, we haven't talked about it on this channel in the last 5 months since I started. But I have personally looked at this myself, and I was in fact in engineering. I used sensors to detect things in the past, wrote code to get those sensors to read things. I I know that there's problems with this. I've looked into it, and the fact is it has a lot of problems with identifying often black and brown faces, particularly because there's something of a lack of black and brown faces in engineering, oftentimes, not always. But yeah, it does open up all sorts of problems that could be coming beyond privacy. But thankfully, like somebody else mentioned earlier in chat, nobody goes to malls anymore anyway. But wait, what else was there? Was one other thing I was going to say, but now I can't even remember it. Nope, my brain broke. Just gonna move on. Oh, that's what it was. The reason that they're claiming that they're doing this is to help avoid active shooter events. But as you all know, that's not my preferred way of ending gun violence.
Get rid of the Second Amendment.
Okay, now let's go to this. And we've been talking about this ad nauseum for months. According to ABC 7 New York, the Justice Department has now offered Boeing a plea deal agreement in its fraud case over fatal crashes.
Illegal.
A hefty fine, increased oversight, and a probationary period. Boeing faces those penalties if it signs an expected plea deal from the Department of Justice. The deal allows Boeing to avoid trial for allegedly misleading the U.S. government while evaluating its frequently used 737 MAX jets. The conspiracy charge was filed back in 2021 after two Boeing jets crashed, one in 2018, the other in 2019. A total of 346 people were killed. ABC's Alexis Christoforous has details.
Attorneys for the crash.
Are there faces on AR-15s now? No. In fact, no, there aren't. And there's no real good technology out there to identify. There's no like identifier for guns that you could equip to a camera that would be successful in a way that would be meaningful. It would be even harder to figure out, considering how many things people hold in their hands to be able to distinguish between gun and other sorts of things that might look similar to guns. You would be getting false red flag after red flag.
Victims' families say the proposed deal would allow Boeing to plead guilty to a conspiracy charge for misleading the FAA during its evaluation of the 737 MAX aircraft, the plane involved in the two crashes, Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019. Under terms of the deal, the plane maker would avoid a public trial, agree to appoint an external corporate monitor, and be fined about $200 million, well short of the $20 billion families have requested. Some families of the 346 people killed in two deadly Boeing 737 plane crashes say if this deal goes through, they'll be denied justice.
We need to hold Boeing accountable, not have them just pay fines as
Seriously.
part of the cost.
Seriously. I would like you... Actually, I wouldn't like you to do this because it's a crime. But just let's do a little thought experiment, right? Consider yourself. And just think about what you might be able to try and get away with in your everyday life, right? I'll bet that at no point do you mislead the entire country through a governmental body lying directly to them and then completely just going against everything that they had asked for you to do, wind up killing a bunch of people because of your decision, and then get a slap on the wrist. I'd love to hear how people think they might wind up faring in the legal system if they were to do something even slightly similar to that. Yeah, you'd probably get worse punishment for jaywalking. It's about time we start actually jailing CEOs. People with decision-making power, which affects the lives of not just people in the United States, but across the world because of the global economy. But no, that won't be happening. That's what companies are for. They shield you from legal liability. It's magic. Okay, let's talk about something that's not magic. This is, well, it's that time. It's time for us to get to the environmental news. And I think we'll start with this story from Cron 4 out of the Bay Area from 7 hours ago, where a red flag warning has been issued. There we go.
Kylie was mentioning both the North Bay and the East Bay will be experiencing high temperatures this week, and that comes with some very serious warnings. Cron 4's Charles Clifford joins us live from Concord with details about that. Hi, Charles.
Well, good afternoon. Yeah, here in Concord right now, it's about 85 degrees or so. You take a look at the hillside behind me here. This is the Lime Ridge open space. It's just crispy and dry out there. All that green grass from springtime is gone. But the real heat, as Kyla just mentioned, starts tomorrow morning. The National Weather Service has issued an excessive heat warning for a large portion of California and most of the Bay Area. It starts Tuesday morning and runs through Saturday, a 5-day period. High temperatures could reach between the 90s and 110s. There's also an excessive heat advisory during the same time for coastal and bayside areas. Along with the hot weather, gusty winds and low humidity are possible.
That's not good. Whenever they say extreme heat and then also low humidity and high winds, my heart rate starts going. I don't live anywhere near the Bay Area, but them's is the ingredients for a real shitty time as it comes to potential fires being started and spread. And with July 4th coming around in, what is it now, 3 days? Yeah. Let's hope people are responsible this year. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. But yeah, 90s to 110s for the Bay Area this week.
So hot right now.
That's hot.
Okay. Let's go to one other story from Cron 4, completely unrelated to heat. This is from literally like 50 minutes before I started the stream. Breaking news. Sinkhole opens inside the middle of Trader Joe's. I missed a big opportunity here. I'm just realizing now I missed a huge opportunity. Whatever. Whatever. I can't find the clip in time.
Trader Joe's grocery store in Marin County is closed, reportedly because of a sinkhole inside the store. Our Leslie Gooden caught up with customers and has what they are saying.
Is this closed? Dozens of shoppers at the Trader Joe's in Larkspur left empty-handed after being met with these closed signs. Taking a look inside, parts of the store appeared blocked off and covered. Some customers say they have been trying to shop here for days.
Like a week and change ago,
And I had the same thing happen. Actually, a very friendly person met me outside and he said, we're really sorry. We have some unplanned construction. Hopefully we'll be back up and running soon. And clearly that hasn't happened yet.
Multiple people are telling Cron 4 that the unexpected closure is due to a sinkhole forming towards the back of the store. Some customers say they saw Trader Joe's removing freezers from inside a few days ago.
Yeah, I don't see any big signs or anything, so I just pull in and the lot's empty, and I still didn't realize they were closed, but I don't know how they could communicate to the community better.
It's not clear when the store is set to reopen, but for now, shoppers are asked to head to the Trader Joe's in San Rafael.
A lot of over.
My God, what are you gonna do without your Trader Joe's? Is this aisle closed? Yeah. Wild. Just would not have expected that, but sinkholes can happen anywhere. We've seen a couple of crazy ones recently. I really wanted to play that This Is the End movie clip where they get sucked up into the sky inside the supermarket. It just felt like the perfect time, and yet I just wasn't prepared for it. Okay, let's talk about natural gas. This is from CBS News from 9 hours ago. Environmental impact of the United States as the world's biggest exporter of liquefied natural gas. Well, let's find out.
In this morning's Climate Watch, we are looking at the fight over a booming energy source, which is supposed to be better than coal when it comes to climate change. It's called liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and the U.S. is now the world's top supplier. However, producing and burning that fuel also increases greenhouse gas emissions, so in the long run, is it really better?
No. Answer is no. And I've never really understood the argument that they're making about why liquefied natural gas is somehow better than coal. Does coal stay in the atmosphere longer? Yes. But it's not nearly as detrimental or heat trapping as methane, right? Methane, as we know, is 80 times more powerful than the emissions created by oil. By like gasoline and things like that. I don't know if it's exactly as powerful as it relates to coal, but the fact is that this is the opposite of what we need to be supporting, right? Like we talked about it kind of a lot recently, but the fact is, because methane leaves the atmosphere much faster, if we were to cut down on it, and due to its high potency, we would actually be able to cool the planet if we drastically reduced our methane emissions.
National and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy talked with local folks and climate activists about the controversy over new gas plants along the Gulf Coast.
On most days, John Allaire grabs his camera out of his truck.
And what are you looking for? What are you taking pictures of?
Of them flaring.
To see what his neighbor is doing.
So when they're flaring like that, when that's coming out of that stack, what is that?
That's methane, mostly.
His mailbox is just a mile from this liquefied natural gas export terminal called Calcasieu Pass. LNG is natural gas that is supercooled into a liquid, so it can be...
Probably smells like farts.
...loaded onto tankers and shipped overseas.
I am not saying kill all the cows. That's not what I'm saying. We've actually seen some very interesting studies on the effects of, I think it's red algae. Some particular kind of algae, if it's introduced into the diet of cows, can actually reduce the methane emissions from cows by 90%.
One of those stacks, you see the red and white stacks over there? those are putting out emissions.
Alaire is a former oil industry engineer and is documenting what's known as flaring, when the plant burns off excess gas.
This is what clean energy looks like in Louisiana.
He's not only
It doesn't
worried
look
about
super
breathing
clean.
potentially toxic air, but also about America's natural resources being sent to Europe and Asia.
And it makes no sense. It's all about let's monetize it, make as much money as we can.
So if this was staying domestic, you'd feel differently about it?
Yeah.
The plant is owned by a company called
Jesus.
Venture Global.
Wow, what a short-sighted view on things. If it stayed in America, it wouldn't be a problem. But going to China, unacceptable. Unacceptable. I don't care about the environment.
It denied our request for an interview, but in a statement said it has made dramatic progress in minimizing flaring and that the world needs more energy, specifically natural gas.
False.
This is one of 8 operating LNG export terminals in the U.S. 7 more are under construction. U.S. capacity has more than tripled since 2018.
Now, these are just the export terminals that they're... And I found it interesting that CBS decided to completely just glaze over where we're getting the LNG from, because the map looks way crazier if you add that in. I should have actually pulled this up. Maybe I will. But if you look at where they're getting the LNG from, it's all over the goddamn country. It's by way of fracking. If you're not familiar with that practice, it's absolutely horrific to the environment, to our water supplies, to, to human health. They're doing it all over the country at this point. Nah, fuck it. I'm not getting the map. I think people know. What next? Alright, yes, let's talk about some recent weather events. First, starting here in Houston. This is from earlier today, where a 300-acre wildfire is continuing to burn in Brazoria County, which is very close to a town called Surfside.
All right, we need to go up to Sky 13. All right, so let's go live over Brazoria County. Don Armstrong in Sky.
That's right, over burning wildfire there, 20 miles east of Angleton. Don, you've got a really good view of what this looks like down there.
Yeah, we do. It looks worse than it really is. This is the National Wildlife Refuge down here in Brazoria County, just north of Freeport. And as you can see, lots of smoke in the air. Now, there's no fire equipment here. They're not going to try to put this thing out. This is a typical area down here that many times during the year they will have controlled burns to get rid of the brush down here. And this is kind of a uncontrolled burn.
Comparing it to coal is dishonest. I agree, Jerry. Although, the fact is, in the United States, we do use some coal still. But trying to go from coal to natural gas in the supposed pursuit of a better environment is wholly insincere.
Just lost Don for a second there, lost a signal down there. You keep in mind.
God, not Don.
Wind this morning down here along the coast, and it is pushing all of the smoke offshore. But I would imagine that a lot of people in Freeport are going, what in the world am I smelling? Well, it's part of the National Wildlife Refuge that is going up. A very low slung fire down here, as you can see. Let me zoom in.
Dang, that lens. Holy shit.
It's not a lot of growth. So it's slow moving, and it's going to be a while before this gets put out. Maybe we'll have a passing shower, maybe this afternoon. And
that was wild. I don't know what kind of lens they got on this camera, but that lens just zoomed in like a half a mile. Was it a fucking telescope? Jesus Christ. But yeah, you'll see... Hold on.
Help control all of this, but it's pretty widespread, but scattered throughout the area down here. But well, I'll tell you what, give it a second thought about going down to Surfside this morning.
Oh wow!
Right.
But as you can see, there is a fucking town right here, over here in the right-hand corner. which seems to be incredibly close. These people seem to be way too sort of blasé, sort of laissez-faire attitude about this situation. These people seem to be in some amount of danger.
Off there, as you continue to pan over to the right now, is that a little community? Pan the other way there. Zoom in right there in the middle of your screen. That's a little community? What is that over there?
Yeah, it's a housing community, and like I said, you wake up this morning.
It's a housing community. What other kind? What does that mean? What is a housing community? Are there any communities without houses or places to? What is that? I'm so confused by that. Either way, hopefully those people stay safe. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's look at this. The somewhat, what do you call it? Optimistic, potentially at least. Sort of. Sorry, this is from Denver 7 from a couple hours ago, where Colorado's geothermal potential is going to be tested in this small town.
One new way of making clean energy has quietly cleared some major hurdles recently. California is now building the largest geothermal power development in the U.S., and a company in Utah is drilling nearly 125 geothermal wells.
And now, as Denver 7's Angelica Abaladejo shows us, the heat beneath our feet is being explored in northern Colorado as a potential clean energy source of the future.
Pierce is a square mile, have about 1,000 residents. It's a very small community, and a lot of them feel like family.
You got you some new peacocks. That's what brought Kathy Ortiz to this small town in northeast Colorado, where she serves folks in two ways.
I manage the market and liquor store, and then I'm right across the street to do my duties over here as the mayor.
A mayor close to the community.
This is where I talk to everybody.
But this small town is about to change with something so new.
Probably nobody knows about it.
Empty fields near town and old oil and gas wells like this one in the open space near Ortiz's house will soon be home to experimental tech.
We're going to build a geothermal power plant. I think this technology is going to be a game changer in the renewable energy field and in making clean power.
Gary McDaniel is the CEO of Geothermal Technologies, one of two companies getting grants from Colorado's Energy Office to test geothermal here.
The clean energy needs baseload power, a power that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Solar only works when the sun shines, and wind only works when the wind blows.
But geothermal is on all the time, and
there really isn't any environmental impact. No air emissions, no water emissions, no noise.
And geothermal could give a second life to the depleted oil and gas wells around town.
We see a huge opportunity in Colorado with oil and gas wells being adjacent to communities.
Joanna Ostrom works with Gradient Geothermal.
I was an engineer in the oil and gas basin in Colorado.
She says geothermal is a way to transition the oil and gas industry into
a decarbonized future. Wells that are no longer economic from an oil and gas perspective because they just don't make any oil or gas.
Will get tested to see
and if the wells can produce power, and then what sort of benefits we can provide to the community.
Like heat.
Oh, that's wild. They're repurposing old oil wells and attempting to use them as... Oh, this is very interesting. I like this. I didn't actually catch that part earlier. That's an interesting plan. I genuinely hope this works. Really, really, really do. Because if it does... suddenly we got a lot to talk about. We could start replacing some of these oil jobs everyone's always complaining about losing potentially when we make the transitions and blah, blah. Oh, we need the oil jobs though. Even though it might kill and just, you know, all sorts of things. Might completely destroy the earth. But no, we need the jobs. Well, what if I told you we got other jobs? Wouldn't even have to, you wouldn't even have to, you know, really change very much, right? Okay. Let's quickly look at this flooding that both Jersey and Philadelphia have been getting hit by. As earlier in the week, they had I think over the weekend, they had a bunch of storms.
Those strong storms also causing some trees to snap, leaving some drivers stranded in the floodwater. Action News reporter Brianna Smith has details about the damage.
Communities across the Delaware Valley now have to deal with the aftermath of these strong storms, from toppled trees to flooded roads to vehicle crashes. While some have to focus on cleaning up, others are welcoming these seasonable temperatures. People across the Delaware Valley started their Sunday with more heat and humidity.
We're hot. We need some water.
But many Philadelphians and tourists still ventured to Center City, including Dolores Harris. She planned to watch Wawa Welcome America's Gospel on Independence Mall concert, but it was postponed because of the severe weather threat.
I love my gospel. What can you do? The weather.
Mother Nature took a turn around 4:45 p.m. when the heavy thunderstorms rolled through. Powerful thunder and lightning flashed across the sky as several people ran to escape the torrential downpour. The swift rains led to flash flooding in some spots. In Wilmington, Delaware, emergency crews went to Governor Prince Boulevard for flooded vehicles, where they had to rescue several drivers from high water. In Lower Marion, Montgomery County, firefighters rushed to Centennial and Conshohocken State roads after strong winds and rain caused a tree to fall onto power lines. First responders were also on I-76 in the Camden, New Jersey area after a vehicle overturned and shut down lanes.
Yeah. Yep, weather is causing pandemonium all over the place. What do I think of your idea for Yellowstone? What is your idea? You want to turn Yellowstone National Park into a power plant? My only objection to your idea is that I don't feel like Yellowstone's a great place to put. Or like, we would have to transfer that power to places, and it's not exactly a very heavily populated area with Yellowstone. So I'm afraid that it would benefit the bears before it benefited people. Yeah, but it's definitely innovative. I'll give you that much. Really trying to innovate, and I can appreciate that. Okay, now let's talk about something that chat was talking about a little bit earlier and that we've been talking about for a few days. Hurricane Beryl. Start here. Associated Press. So this is in the
all of the reports throughout Grenada so far overnight indicate that we've had varying degrees of rainfall and varying degrees of wind, but there has not been any reports of any major damage as a result of the weather, and so we are grateful and thankful for that. So far, it means our prayers are being answered, but the next 8 hours are absolutely critical. The state of emergency remains in place. It is for your own safety.
Teams are deployed. Those will consist of the police, the BDF, roving response. They would be deployed to literally drive the length of the major arteries in Barbados to check for debris, check for fallen trees, check for fallen poles, to ensure that it's safe for people to come out and use the road.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, Badash. It's a massive source of geothermal energy, and it's raw. But my only problem is the actual transportation of that energy, and at least from my understanding, it's best to have power plants near the places, at least near enough to the places that you don't have to have just literally whatever, like thousands and thousands of miles. I'm trying to think of exactly how much copper wire you would need to transport all that power across the, because I mean, you're right, it's a huge amount of power there, but the actual transportation of the power is the problem. The logistics of that, right? Where the carbon footprint would probably be a lot less if we just, you know, had geothermal energy near the places where it's needed. All right, let's look at this from Reuters. According to them, Hurricane Beryl, extremely dangerous, Category 4 storm at this point, at least. Although somebody mentioned it's a Category 5 now, I think.
Strong winds lashed Grenada on Monday as Hurricane Beryl made landfall in the Caribbean, churning into the Windward Islands and threatening devastating flooding and storm surges. The U.S. National Hurricane Center called the Category 4 storm an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation, as winds from Beryl reached 150 miles per hour, and it dropped up to 10 inches of rain in some areas. Michael Brennan is the Hurricane Center's director.
You can see the very well-defined eye in both visible and infrared satellite imagery. Beryl has re-strengthened this morning as it's gone through an eye wall replacement cycle. So now is when we're experiencing those catastrophic Category 4 wind conditions in portions of the Grenadines, places like Union Island, Palm Island, Petite Martinique, Petite St. Vincent, Carriacou.
The appearance of a major hurricane this early in the Atlantic hurricane season is rare. So is the quick strengthening of this storm, according to Christopher Rosoff.
It's more than rare, at least from what I understand, what I've heard since hearing about this, reaching this level, is that it is the earliest ever Category 4 storm recorded in the Atlantic. I think it supersedes like a 30+ year record, which is held, I think, since like something like the 90s.
Atmospheric scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research.
It had a very intense shift in intensity from a Category 1 to Category 4 storm in less than 24 hours, making it one of the most impressive rapid intensification cases in Atlantic history. And we honestly have not seen any recorded storms perform such an intensification rate prior to September 1st in the history books. So for a storm to do this in late June is something we have not seen before.
This dude looked real worried. And, you know, I'm not an expert on body language reading. He seems fucking concerned. When you got, you know, people such as this, environmental scientists, showing a great deal of concern about this sort of thing, I also start, you know, perking up. But yeah, think about that, because we already heard earlier this year from the NOAA that this is going to be the most active, the most intense hurricane season that we've ever seen. But I don't think anybody was expecting us to break multiple records with the first hurricane of the season, right? Because that's two different records: the earliest and the fastest grown, right? From basically from a tropical storm to 4 in whatever he was saying, like 24 hours or something like that. It's just insane. It's just insane. Okay, now just gonna look at this. This came out like right before I started streaming. This footage shows some of the damage that's been done so far in the Caribbean from Hurricane Beryl. Hey. There we go. Okay. Stream software acting crazy again. Oh, no, don't do that. How dare you do this to me? This is so rude. Go back. There we go. This is in Barbados. You can see the tide's really coming in. Way up high on that beach. Yeesh. They did say that winds were like 150 miles per hour. Oh, God. Like 150 miles per hour in this storm. And I'm pretty sure there's more footage, which I just haven't seen because I was dealing with all sorts of things today. And but I am hearing the damage is in fact
the damage
getting
is right now.
much
I'm
worse.
real heartbroken because this is a lot of work. This is more than a week's work here. We have sand also not on the outside, but on the inside of the shop.
That's not where you want sand. That's a good point. For a second, I thought this was a beach, but yeah, this must be a road. Must be pavement underneath this sand. Jesus Christ.
It's 10 a.m. and now it's 5:02. The floods are coming in. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine.
I love how she's saying to herself over and over again, we're going to be fine as the waters are coming in. My God. I do hope she is fine. 47 likes. That's insane. That is crazy. That's unprecedented. Okay. Can we get to 50? That's a great question. Can we get to 50? So close. Seems very attainable. Alright, now let's go on to storms that are affecting different parts of the world. First, let's go to Europe. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but now hundreds have been evacuated from this Italian town after getting hit by floods. Oh, wait. I forgot I have one more video. I have one more video on Beryl. That's my bad.
5:30. Hurricane Beryl has now made landfall on one of the islands of Grenada. It happened this morning and it went ashore as a Category 4. Experts are already calling this an unprecedented storm. We're getting more and more images. Beryl is the first Atlantic storm to reach Category 4 intensity this early in the season. ABC's Zareen Shah joins us now live with the latest on this developing and dangerous situation.
Shari, the temperatures of the waters near Beryl are 2 to 3 degrees higher for this time of year, and residents are bracing for up to 10 inches of rain.
Whoa, we have 50. Insane. I don't think we've ever gotten 50 likes on a live stream. Incredible. Okay, I'll roll the dice. I will roll the dice. What does that say? No, we already have that. Fuck. 20. Oh, 20. That's a buddy Jesus on a raptor. Uh-oh. But stream software is lagging. Hold on. I'll be right back. I actually have to pee. Hopefully my stream software will catch up. Ooh, I can get it in here. Wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, be right back. Seriously though, 50 likes, amazing. Your first time watching, I earned the like? Well, thank you, Mike B. Appreciate you. I think this is the first time I'm seeing your name. Okay, yeah, BRB. Okay. I'm back. I'm back.
And possible flash flooding in some areas. Powerful 150-mile-per-hour winds and pounding rain as Hurricane Beryl tears through the Caribbean, making landfall on Cariaco Island, pushing torrential waves inland. The historic storm plowing through the Windward Islands, which includes areas popular with tourists such as Grenada, St. Vincent, and Barbados, where you can see debris scattered in flooding streets. Listen as heavy rainfall blankets the region. Beryl's winds nearing Category 5 status at landfall, the most extreme hurricane on the scale.
There's been nothing like this, really, in recorded history in the Atlantic at this time of year. So it's not a great omen.
I feel like we're constantly reporting this kinds of news and sort of statistics. I hate these statistics. Completely unprecedented. Come on, pal, you couldn't think of one thing to give me some kind of solace. Jesus Christ.
Since records were kept, there hasn't been a Cat 4 hurricane in the island basin during the month of June until now. Experts say the higher than usual water temperature is ripe for hurricanes.
Certainly climate change is playing a role. It plays a role in a lot of things. I don't think that's responsible for the relatively abrupt jump that we've seen in ocean temperatures in the past year, but it's certainly an ingredient.
ABC's chief climate correspondent Ginger Z has been tracking the storm.
Why are we acting like it's the peak of hurricane season and having such strong storms? Because the water's like that. It looks more like...
Jesus. When you figure big business is going to wake up? Because that seems to be who we're all waiting on, right? You know, the government isn't really taking control of this and attempting to do anything themselves to avert climate change in any real meaningful way. So when you figure big business will wake up to all this and start, you know, changing things. I don't know. When you figure big oil will give up, ever? LNG industry? Think any of them are gonna think to themselves, yeah, maybe we're not helping things before it's like, you know, too late? Just wondering out loud. Don't expect any actual answers. Sorry, chat. Okay, got a couple more environmental news stories here. You know, I should have just waited. Could have taken a normal break. Okay, let's go to Italy and look at the aftermath of that storm that we looked at yesterday.
The alpine town of Cone in northeastern Italy has been cut off after a river flash flood caused its own...
No, absolutely. Bob Carmody is totally right about that one. The military is planning for climate catastrophe. But that doesn't give me any solace either, right? They're just planning for it to happen. That's the opposite of what I want, right? We need people planning for how we avoid climate catastrophe, not just how we get through it, if you will, how we maintain the state throughout it all, right? That's not my concern. My concern is about human suffering. My concern is about, you know, avoiding literal catastrophe on a global scale, right? And it doesn't seem like the government's trying to avert it so much as just kind of figure out how to get through it themselves, and it seems very short-sighted.
The alpine town of Cone in northeastern Italy has been cut off after a river flash flood caused its only road in or out to collapse over the weekend. Rescue workers said they had evacuated about 500 people by helicopter, mainly tourists, by Monday morning. About 200 more remain to be evacuated.
The military knows it's coming, that was your point. Yeah, no, I got that point. And it makes me more upset knowing that they know, right? And are somehow not taking the necessary steps to keep it from happening.
Supplies are also being brought into the town by helicopter, and emergency services are working to fix drinkable water pipelines damaged by the floods. According to local media, phone and internet connections remain problematic. It's the latest emergency caused by extreme flooding in the region. with the nearby mountain town of Savinia suffering damage to roads and buildings after storms pounded the region over the weekend.
So yeah, they evacuated all the tourists from the town, so thankfully all the tourists are nice and safe. But it seems like the people who are staying in the town are dealing with quite a serious cleanup after this event. You named your cat after a university? Interesting. Alright, one last flood to talk about for today. This one is in China, where the Yangtze River has now flooded for the first time in 2024. Oh, there it is. Buddy. We got Buddy Jesus. Heavy rains have swelled the country's major rivers unusually early. The Yangtze, the country's longest river, is flooding for the first time in 2024. The Three Rivers Gorges Dam cut water flows to protect downstream areas. It is expected that in July, in the middle and lower reaches of the river, as well as the Huaiyi River, floods may also occur. Oh my god! Oh my god, how am I supposed to read that fast? That was insane. As well as in the Huaiyi River, Yihe River, and Shuhe River. Floods may also occur in the Haihe River Basin. This includes the Jiangwei River, Jia River, as well as the Songhua River, Second Songhua River, and Liaohe River. I know I talked about at least one of those. Some regions say the floods are the worst in 25 years. The emergency response alert is at the second highest level in several parts of China. In April, the Pearl River Basin, including the Beijing River, oh my god, saw 600 floods, including 2 occurring 2 months earlier than usual. Holy shit, she just talks so fast. Among them, the first and second floods on the Beijing River were the earliest and most severe floods recorded in the major rivers nationwide since the relevant statistics were compiled in 1998. Torrential rain hit southern and eastern China in June. Dozens of people have been killed by floods and landslides. Tens of thousands more have been displaced or relocated. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for all-out efforts to protect lives. 2.3 billion yuan, or $300 million, is the estimated amount of disaster relief funds already spent by Beijing. That's a lot. It's a lot. Although it doesn't even nearly come close to how much we need to spend to try and stop doing this stuff we've been doing. The music was it felt very interstellar-y to me. Landslides are hella scary. I've never experienced one, but all of the footage I've seen is terrifying, and it's worse than water. It's like mud and rocks coming at you. Title and taxes not included. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Oh, okay, it's time for a galactic intermission. Well, I hope everybody has been enjoying the stream so far. If you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. They both really help me out. The like, helps let YouTube know who and what kind of people enjoy these videos. And the subscriptions, well, I need it. We need to get 500 to be able to monetize this goddamn channel. If you've already done those two things and you'd like to help out even further, well, there's one good option. And that is by going on to my Patreon, using that link in chat, where you can become a Galactic producer for just a few dollars a month and gain access to some super sweet space benefits, unseen by the rest of the goddamn galaxy. Anyway, chat, we will end this break in a little bit. Grab yourself a drink, perhaps a snack, and maybe shake out your limbs, whatever you need to do. And I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Curtain call, everyone. Curtain call. The show will be starting shortly. I know, 50 likes. That is the highest number of likes we've gotten on a stream, as well as we hit the highest number of viewers we've ever hit on the stream. One stream today. I think we hit 45. I was just blown away by something like that. I mean, we've gotten close to 40 before. For us to pass 40 and go straight to 45, hey, I'm all about it. Shocking, considering I only have 165 subscribers. It's like, it's practically 30%. Okay, global news. And as always, we are going to start with little space news. First, we're going to look at a story that we quickly looked at yesterday, and we're going to quickly look at again today, as this one was absolutely fucking wild. In Canada, I just thought Canada because I saw somebody typing about it being Canada Day today. My bad to you Canadians. I didn't realize it was Canada Day until just now. That's my bad. But let's not talk about Canada. Let's talk about China. Where yesterday a malfunction caused this. Chinese space rocket blasted off without warning during a test. My Tianlong 3 rocket was developed by a private Chinese business, Space Pioneer. Oh boy. It lifted off unexpectedly during what was intended to be a ground test of its booster. That's not the ground anymore. Definitely not the ground. Oh boy. The rocket then fell back to Earth, crashing into a hilly area near the city of Gongyi in Henan province. Oh god. So basically, it's Chinese Elon, yes. State media said that no casualties had been reported. Cover your ears, everyone. It's about to be loud. Space Pioneer said the incident was due to a structural failure of the launch moorings. Holy fuck. Looks like a nuclear bomb. The thing is insane. That freaking explosion was insane. The company said that after the misfire, the onboard computer shut down. It crashed into the hills 1.5 kilometers from the test site, far away from the urban area. Far away is something of a misnomer, I feel. If you can capture it on a camera from over here, it can't be that far away. Okay? That is just my estimation of the situation. It has, if it's far away, no, that's not the right way to word that. I would say it landed near the town, actually. But that's just the way I would put things. I'm not in charge of China's PR. If I'd be a little bit more honest about that one. Seems to be plenty of footage. Okay, now let's go on. Thankfully, at least according to China, nobody was hurt. Jerry seems to be a little bit skeptical on that. I'm trying to waylay my skepticism, but I too have some amount of skepticism. Let's look at a successful launch across the Sea of Japan to Japan, where they launched an observation satellite on its new flagship H3 rocket. What's up with everybody calling their rocket some word and then the number 3? What's up with the number 3 right now, people? I'm not a numerologist, but something weird's happening. In Tanegashima, Japan. It's called Japan, China. Good job, me. Good job. That's right, Mini Doctors. 51 likes on this stream. Truly monumental. Epic proportions, if you will. I know, right, Bob? It didn't even explode. It's weird. Gotta be honest, many of the recent space stuff that's been going on has been fraught with problems. It's not just Boeing, somehow. Somehow not Boeing only. Although, Boeing's having a myriad of problems that aren't even space-related, so hard to compare the two. Okay, what else do we... Okay, done talking about space, we're gonna talk about real global news, at least earthly news. Starting off in Britain, across the pond. This is from TRT World from 17 hours ago. According to them, candidates are focusing on quote-unquote broken Britain as living standards decline. Does sound bad.
Into the election home stretch, and Rishi Sunak's mantra is that the economy is back on track.
We have truly turned.
Oh, he fixed it, apparently.
Inflation back to normal, the economy growing, wages rising, energy bills falling.
But that's not the reality for Elaine, who, like millions across the UK, still feels the squeeze of the cost of living crisis.
It's just when suddenly the basics that you can't alter just suddenly shoot up. You know, you go from feeling like, oh, we've got money left over every month, we can save and so on, to kind of looking at your budget and thinking, oh God, okay, I can't spend anything for the next week because where's it going to come from? You know, when you go around Morrison's and you're just constantly going, how much?
Well, I'll tell you how much, because it's not just Elaine doing a double take on price tags at the shops. The cost of these essentials is rising. Bread is up 30% in the last year alone, from $1.60 to $2.30, whilst eggs are up 22% to $4.40. It all adds up.
That does add up, especially with things that you're buying over and over again. That's how adding things works. Have I legitimately not seen the news from the Supreme Court today? What's that supposed to mean, Pitchforks? We talked about the Supreme Court for like at least 30 minutes today, if not longer. Just gonna point that out. Now, unless you've already watched the whole stream and saw that, and there's some other news that I missed, in which case I'd love to know what it is you're talking about. But we definitely talked about the Supreme Court today. In fact, we rehashed some of the Supreme Court news from yesterday, and then we talked about it. Then we talked about the stuff that happened today as well. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. We talked about all this stuff. We talked about Chevron. We talked about the Grants Pass decision. We talked about what is it? What's the thing? My brain just broke. Trying to switch topics right now is killing me. Oh, God, we're so far past Supreme Court right now. Anyways, let's stay focused on Britain for now.
Inflation is now back on target at a 3-year low, but it offers little relief to the millions struggling. Prices are stabilising at a much higher level. In the last 3 years, food is up 31%, energy bills up 53%, and rent is up 20%. Almost everyone is worse off. As we stand on the cusp of the election, 6 in 10 say they have been forced to make spending cuts. Labour says it will be different if it is elected.
We will make new choices to reform our economy and public services. Hard choices.
What does that mean?
Choices ducked for years. These choices will be fully funded and fully costed.
I feel like somebody correct me. I know I have multiple UK people in here. Does Keir Starmer over here sound like a conservative right now? Because it sounds like he's preparing to slash what do you call it? Like spending on social programs and things like that. That's what I'm hearing. I could be wrong. That's what I'm hearing.
All polls point to a heavy Tory loss after 14 years in power, but many voters worry life won't become easier if Labour win.
When a politician says hard choices, they mean cuts. They mean taking resources away from ordinary people. That's always what that means, and I think that's what he's signalling. So I would love it if I thought that actually this will all be over and this will all be fine on the 5th of July, but I really don't think that it will.
She makes a very good point. I have no idea. I feel like I have just a very tangential idea of it, really. Because the fact is, I don't have to go through thinking about Keir Starmer every day. I can forget about him because he doesn't affect me as much as, say, Joe Biden or Donald Trump would affect me. I'm sure there'd be some sort of butterfly effect, but you know, just the details are somewhat lost on me from time to time, and I'm okay with admitting that.
Since World War II, voters in every election have gone to the polls feeling their living standards are improving. This year is an exception. Disposable
I'll let her finish.
incomes are falling in what has been the worst period for living standards in modern history.
And this is the thing that I've actually been hearing also about America right now, where we've essentially gone backwards, right? Where the supposed promise to future generations is truly no longer there. When I find out what happened today, do this. I don't know what that means. Are you talking about them saying that? Are you talking about the Trump immunity stuff, like the presidential immunity shit? Because that was the big story that everybody was covering today in the Supreme Court. So I feel like I'm not the only one that missed it. If that's not what you're talking about. Disposable income is a myth. I mean, some people definitely gotta have disposable income, especially, I don't know, like billionaires and multi-millionaires. They gotta have some kind of disposable income coming in, right? I get what you're saying. In terms of the vast majority of people, yeah, not there. But yeah, in terms of like the promise to future generations of having a better standard of living, of things not being worse off for them than it was for the past. I think that was the supposed thing that was promised to future generations that no longer is really, it's like easily shown that it's no longer there in the way that it was for previous generations. And it is definitely, I think, causing a lot of people to question not just the system, or like not just who's running the system, but the system itself. Presidential immunity is huge. Yeah, I know it is. We talked about that, though. We definitely talked about presidential immunity. It is huge. It is fucked. I'm honestly more concerned about the Chevron doctrine, somehow, than the presidential immunity. It's like a close second, but all of them are just so, like, in the last, how long? Like the last month, the Supreme Court has made at least 5 or 6 absolutely, like, game-changing decisions that, in fact, are negative for society at large. You want me to dive like deep into it? I see. Well, maybe we will later. Not today. Not today. Okay, I've totally lost my focus. Where am I? Ah, yes. Let's look at this real quick, since we were talking about living standards in Britain and all of that. I figured this would be a good thing for us to quickly breeze through. This is a Bloomberg original piece from 3 weeks ago. How private equity ate Britain.
Help! Help! I'm being repressed!
Ah, the charming British High Street, or Main Street if you're American, with its cobbled streets, picturesque pubs and cutesy bakeries. But there's an uncomfortable truth lurking behind the storefronts, because a lot of these stores are not owned by independent shopkeepers or even big multinationals. Instead, they're controlled by private equity investors. In fact, private equity has flown into the UK at an unprecedented rate since Brexit, hoovering up scores of high street names such as Burger King, New Look and Pizza Express.
This is a story about the private equity raid on some of the best-known high street companies in the UK in the aftermath of both Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now, as the UK adjusts to new economic realities, the private equity boom could pose a problem for the future of the British high street and the millions of people who work on it. Because most private equity is dependent on one thing: debt.
The Confederate flags are showing up in your town. Fucking red states. You know what's funny about that, Sticks? You know, the fact is I think for a really long time, I thought that that's the way things were in terms of being sort of bifurcated between blue and red states. Fact is, there's Confederate flag loving people in blue states too. When I spend time on Earth, I'm mainly in the state of New York, and I've seen people with Confederate bumper stickers and things like that on their pickup trucks. Too many times. Too many times for a place that's supposedly, what are they always calling it? A liberal hellscape. No, it's filled, there's plenty of fucking insane conservatives that also happen to live in blue states. So, just being in a red state doesn't, or vice versa, keep you from being subjected to shit like that. But I get the frustration. Every time I see something like that, I just have to say, you know, goose fraba, if you will. Okay, what was I doing? Oh yeah, we're talking about how private equity ate Britain. Thank you, Bloomberg.
Let's start by unpacking how private equity works, and in particular, the main tool in the industry's arsenal, the leveraged buyout. Okay, so imagine you want to buy a little shop for, say, £500,000. You use £100,000 of your own money to pay for the deposit, but you borrow the remaining £400,000, usually from a bank. You spend another £50,000 sprucing the place up, then sell it 3 years later for £800,000. That covers your costs and whatever you still owe the bank, and you pocket the difference as profit. Now, imagine that rather than you being responsible for repaying the money you borrowed, the shop itself was responsible.
Weird.
Not you, the shop. You can walk off into the sunset with all the proceeds of the sale. The shop's new owner now has to find a way of repaying what you borrowed. That is sort of how leveraged buyouts work. You buy a company and fund much of the purchase price with debt or leverage, often in the form...
This is such a convoluted, fucked up way of doing capitalism, if you will. Like, this is genuinely just some idiotic thinking that brought all of this about, right? And in the wake of the bailouts and the bank crises and all of these things, when banks were supposed to be lending to like normal people, like instead of that we got this shit going on, and it really really gets me going.
Of bonds.
So essentially you could buy a really massive company and load it up with debt to pay for your acquisition of that company.
And if the company goes bust, you don't lose as much as if you paid for the whole thing with cash. Let's get back to the UK. To understand what's been going on here, we're going to look at Morrison's. For much of its existence, it was family-owned, and until recently, it was one of the big 4 supermarket chains.
One look and you'll know our prices are low whenever you shop at Morrison's.
Look at this chart. It shows how Morrison's valuation compares to US retailers as a multiple of their earnings. That's just a way of comparing companies on a like-to-like basis, even if the firms aren't the same size. And in the years immediately after Brexit, the valuation...
They have Morrison's all over your area?
...were pretty comparable until the pandemic came along. Then look what happened. The US retailers recovered with the post-pandemic spending bump. Morrison's did not.
Morrison's valuation was cheaper compared to US peers, making it quite attractive for an external buyer.
So in 2021, we're just coming out of COVID lockdown, and there is a bidding war for Morrison's between private equity firms.
The American firm Clayton Dubilier & Rice emerged victorious, paying about £7 billion in October 2021. Just a few months earlier, Morrison's had been valued at £4.5 billion. But even that inflated price seemed worthwhile because low interest rates meant it was easy to borrow a lot of money. And Morrison's wasn't alone. Private equity piled into Britain in a big way in the years after Brexit.
And outlook negative. Post-Brexit.
Okay, hold on. Can't watch this whole thing. That would be crazy. Just getting sucked into it. Just watching the fucking travesty unfold in front of my eyes. Because, like, let's be real. Like, when private equity goes to get loans from a bank, they got no problems. Right? They got no problems. They're an institution. Well, not an institution, but they're like a corporate entity. And banks love lending to those people. Right? They got capital to back it up. Meanwhile, you got Americans suffering who might need a loan but don't have the, I don't know, the credit score to get a personal loan. Which, by the way, personal loan interest rates are not quite they're not an all-time high by any means, but they're at I think like a 20-year high or something close to it. Yes, let's go to this. Seems like a good place to. Yeah.
In the case of Morrison's, it was something like £6.6 billion.
Here's the important bit. When CD&R bought Morrison's, interest rates were low. But since then, they have increased.
Around half of Morrison's debt, that's around £3 billion, is affected by interest rates going up. So that debt is now much more expensive.
The reason that's a problem is that Morrison's competes with other supermarkets on price, and now it has to pay hundreds of millions of pounds more each year in interest payments.
They were just about making enough money to pay their debt, which meant that when Aldi and Lidl came in during a cost of living crisis and cut prices, Morrison's simply couldn't keep up with them.
That's helped Aldi overtake Morrison's as the UK's 4th biggest supermarket. To deal with the suffocating debt load, Morrison's has sold assets, including a £2.5 billion deal for its petrol stations in January. It's hoping that will let it offer lower prices to shoppers. These problems are besetting a lot of the businesses that private equity has bought.
All of this really matters.
Okay, I think we've punished ourselves enough with private equity. Just wanted to remind us ourselves of just how much they're ruining not just the United States, but the entire world. Certainly the West. Good God. And then just pass all the consequences on to the consumers, and or like just the communities that they serve. You see, there's been cases where private equity has gone in and bought debt from towns, and then when towns had problems, they just gutted social services in the town, sold off things like infrastructure and shit to private bidders. God. So they're definitely part of why the cost of living crisis even exists. Not saying they're the only reason, but they're way up there. Done the same thing. We talked about the Family Dollar thing too, right? I can't remember. I think we did, because they bought out like Family Dollar and the other one, Dollar Tree, I think. Okay, now let's go on to talk a little bit about the EU. First, I figured we would start with this one, and France 24 English. They're reporting that the EU is charging Meta, aka Facebook, over violating competition rules.
Illegal.
And Yuka joins me here on set. Yuka, the European Union has charged Facebook owner Meta with breaching the bloc's tech rules.
Well, Monty, it's Meta's new pay or consent advertising model that got in Brussels crosshairs. The EU's antitrust regulators say that no ads subscription service violates the digital.
Oh my god, that threw me off so much. They went from having her mic muted to being full volume. Jesus Christ.
Markets Act, the latest in a wave of recent crackdowns on big tech. If convicted, it could result in billions of euros in fines for Meta, as Jenny Shen explains.
Another tech giant in hot water with the European Union. The EU Commission says Meta violated the blog's digital competition rules by forcing Facebook and Instagram users to choose between seeing ads or paying at least €10 to avoid them.
You don't say.
The preliminary findings concern the compliance of Meta with the DMA provision on combining personal data. The next step is for Meta to reply to these, to have a look at our file, and then, we see what the next steps are.
The findings come after a probe into Meta under the Digital Markets Act, which forces tech giants to give European users more choice online. The Commission says Meta's model does not allow users to exercise their right to freely consent to allowing their personal data from its various services, including Facebook, Instagram, Marketplace, WhatsApp and Messenger, to be combined to target them with personalized online ads.
Yeah,
but Meta insists it's done no wrong.
Subscription.
Facebook says they've done no wrong.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Okay, let's move on. Enough of you, Meta, aka Facebook. Can't decide on a name. Mark Zuckerberg. You wish the EU would shut Meta down? I guess they could, at least in the EU, if they were. But I don't think they could shut all of Meta down. It would have to be, I think, the US. But even then, I don't even know. What would they do in that case? I think they would probably just set up in a different country. They already got offices in a bunch of them. And other sorts of stuff like that. I'm sure they'd figure out a way around it. Could be wrong. I could be wrong. Should be more optimistic. Well, hard to be optimistic about the Eurozone economy, quote unquote, with this sort of story here, where apparently Eurozone factory activity has declined even further, as it was already going down earlier this year. Dun 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 dun.
The Eurozone's manufacturing woes deepened during June, according to a key survey released Monday. The closely watched Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, showed manufacturing activity across the bloc fell to 45.8 last month. That was well down from May's 47.3, but slightly ahead of analyst forecasts. It also continues a 2-year run below the 50 mark, separating growth from contraction. One leading analyst from Hamburg Commercial Bank wasn't too downhearted. He said he was inclined to see this as a...
So yeah, I mean, 2 years worth of readings where the Eurozone has been in contraction. And honestly, I'm glad to hear it. We need capitalism to contract in terms of its scope these days, it feels like, since nobody seems to be concerned about doing it in a responsible way most days. Perhaps less will fix something. I don't know. This is me being completely out of ideas. All right, let's go to this in France. Now, we've been talking about the snap election, which Emmanuel Macron called for, a few weeks ago. And yesterday, we talked about how the poll numbers were not looking good in the first portion of the voting, as it appeared that it was going to be pretty beneficial to the national rally. This is from Democracy Now! From 11 hours ago, where they discussed that a little bit further.
We begin today's show in France, where the far right's at the gates of power as it holds a significant lead in the first round of snap parliamentary elections Sunday, a blow to President Emmanuel Macron's Ensemble alliance, which polled third to the right and to the left. Marine Le Pen's anti-immigrant national rally and our bloc has so far clinched nearly 34% of the vote, while the New Popular Front, a coalition formed by leftist parties, came in second with about 28% of the vote. This is far-right leader Marine Le Pen.
My dear compatriots, democracy has spoken, and the French people have placed the National Rally and its allies on top and have practically erased Macron's bloc.
Meanwhile,
Meta is unironically evil. Marine Le Pen is also unironically evil.
Of people took to the streets of Paris and other cities Sunday following news of the initial results. Protesters held signs that read, "Let's not leave France to the fascists," and "Enough of the hatred era."
It worries me personally because we see that the National Rally are on top, and it scares me. We don't see a vote coming for social rights. We don't see economic progress. We don't see immigration. It will worsen rights for LGBT, for women, abortion, medically assisted procreation. All of this will be swept away because it's the far right. We mustn't forget that.
Sunday's election brought out the highest voter turnout in years as young French voters were urged to come out to defeat.
I got a question. And why not? I haven't used the poll since the Galactic UN. I'm just going to use a poll. I want to know this. Because me personally, I don't. Like, do I have one technically? Yeah. Do I use it? Fuck no.
Remus. Leaders of the newly formed leftist New Popular Front also joined mass protests against the rise of the far right, vowing a complete break with Macron's policies. This is Mathilde Panot, head of France Unbowed, speaking from Paris last month.
Popular mobilization is the key to fight against the extreme right and to beat the extreme right. We say regularly that the European elections mark the after-Macron period.
Macron stunned France, calling for the snap elections following major losses in European Parliament elections last month.
Seriously, though, it was stunning. I was stunned. I'm not even in France, and I was stunned. Because the snap elections essentially made it so that the entire House, every single person, if you could just imagine suddenly Congress in the United States, right? Just imagine the House of the Representatives all of a sudden having to all be they're suddenly in a primary, right? It would just be insane. To just suddenly be like, oh, primary, everybody. I'm not saying I'm against it, but at least in this case, it doesn't seem to have been the best plan.
Far-right National Rally Party. The RN has announced 28-year-old Jordan
Bardella
as its candidate for prime minister.
It appears somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of people don't use Facebook, while some of you still do. I just wanted to know.
Party steadily risen in popularity across France as it backs anti-immigrant, xenophobic, racist, and anti-Muslim policies. It's also been accused of anti-Semitism. Many have urged parties to unite.
See, this is the reason why I stopped using Facebook, Jerry, because I felt like I was constantly getting into fights with family and friends on there. It was the place I would go to you know, to alienate some of my, you know, some of my, what do you call it, peers.
It's the RN, as the second round of the elections is scheduled for Sunday, July 7th. For more, we go to Paris, where we're joined by Harrison Stetler, a freelance journalist and teacher. His latest piece for Jacobin is titled, "Corporate France is Making Peace with Marine Le Pen." Welcome to Democracy Now!, Harrison. Can you start off by just describing what took place?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for having me on. I mean, first off, I wish I could say that these results were surprising, were not to be expected. I mean, in electoral politics, you somewhat can occasionally expect to have pleasant surprises in elections. This, unfortunately, is what many observers, what many people in France have seen coming for several weeks, from the day that Emmanuel Macron made the shocking decision in early June to dissolve the National Assembly on the backs of what was a historic victory for the National Rally in the European elections, as you presented in your introduction. I would say the gut reaction on the ground in Paris, in political circles here, in the mainstream media, there's the impression one has is a certain sense of vertigo across the board. I mean, the headline of Le Monde today, the front page cover of Le Monde today, is the far right is on the doorstep of power, and it seems like that says it all. I mean, this has been building for many weeks. The decision to dissolve Parliament is going to, by Macron a few weeks ago, is going to occupy many analysts for many years to come. What was Macron really thinking? Was it a long-shot attempt to reinforce himself? Was it a cynical ploy to perhaps introduce the far right to power, if only to weaken it? That is going to be resolved by historians and whatnot. But now what is clear is that this decision was timed at a moment when the far right was at its strongest historical position in modern French political history, and they've capitalized on that.
This is frustrating as fuck. There are so many things happening right now politically, and so many of them are bad. So many of them are bad. I wish there were more good things. Believe me, if I had a bunch of good things to show you people, we'd be talking about them. Oh boy. We would be talking about them.
Sailed in the momentum of the European elections into a strong first place finish. You said, yes, 33.5% of the vote, according to the latest statistics that I've seen of yesterday's first round vote in these legislative elections. But really, I mean, those figures are, as a percentage, that can maybe be cause for some perhaps undue relief. I mean, 33, that's a third. There are 2/3 of the French electorate that are therefore still opposed. I mean, if you even really dig into these numbers, the upwards of 10.5, according to the latest figures I've seen, 10.5 million people who voted for Marine Le Pen's party under the list of Jordan Bardella, the official president of the National.
By the way, the party of Marine Le Pen is this one over here on the far left, which is obviously on the far right, but it's on the left in the graphic, the Rassemblement National, or the National Rally.
Something like 10.6 according to the latest figures for the first round votes. That's more than about 6 or 7 million voters compared to the legislative elections in 2022, when the party won something like 4.2 million votes. It's just an enormous, enormous surge in 2 years' time for a party that relatively recently was considered beyond the pale of
Seriously, they did not have a lot of power for a very long time, and have only in the last, I think, 2 election cycles, if you're counting this snap election, have actually gained any ground. And yeah, this just seems like a terrible calculation by Emmanuel Macron. Now, I've criticized Emmanuel Macron for being a neo-lib, at least in terms of as neo-lib as he can be as a Frenchman. And I think it's not helpful to the left, as which he described he needed the left to come together to fight. He literally did a speech where he said it, like verbatim. You know, the whole left should come and gather around him, you know. And that did not happen.
Legitimacy and
whoopsies. Hold on. Just watch this last little piece here.
And mantra of this party. And also, I mean, when you have a close second of the left, if the left were to combine with Macron's forces, the center, which were trounced, that would certainly beat out the far right. Is that a possibility in this July 7th final election?
Of course, to respond to the first question, I mean, if there's been shifts back to the original pro-business planks of the far right, what it has clung to absolutely is its staunchly xenophobic rejection of immigration. We're going to see an attempt, if they're in power and in a position to govern, an attempt to fully accelerate and expedite the process for expulsion of immigrants in France, zero tolerance policies, attempts to institute a firm division between French nationals and non-French nationals, even between French nationals and binational French.
Yeah, no, there's some real fascist undercurrents in France that are coming to the surface lately. Like, I don't know if anybody here has seen like any of the rallies these people been holding. I mean, it's not good.
And passport. So the party is there's more that connects it to its past than that distinguishes it. Just one of the second question, which really is the question over the next specifically 24 hours, but mostly until Sunday, is what are the other political forces going to do in this situation? I mean, the National Rally and the faction of the center-right that they're allied with are in a very commanding position, are in first place in the majority of runoffs for next Sunday. And what can the other forces do? I mean, to the left's credit, the New Popular Front Alliance, they have put out a very fair offer, a very reasonable proposition to withdraw all left-wing candidates from districts in which the left-wing candidate qualified for the second round runoff, but is in third place behind another figure of either Macron's bloc, the Macronist centrist coalition, or the wing of the center-right that did not ally with Le Pen. So the left has made it very clear that they are willing to move to reconstitute something along the lines of what the French of the last several decades have called the Republican front against the far right. Now, if you look to what's happening in the Macronist center, you're getting anything but clarity in that regard. You have Macron put out a very sort of vague sentence about the desire to have a Democratic and Republican alliance. You hear some figures say that, yes, they will pull out from certain districts, certain constituencies, when the alternate candidate...
Okay, okay, I think we get it. Don't have to go too much into the weeds on this. But I do have one more video. This is, the next thing we're going to look at is footage of protests, which the left in France have been engaging in ever since these poll results came down about, I want to say somewhere like 24 hours ago or something like that.
Where hundreds of mostly left-wing supporters gathered last night at République in the centre of Paris. The demonstrators there calling for a huge turnout next weekend to block the National Front from taking an overall majority next weekend.
I hope that the political right will call for a widespread mobilization, just as the left did when it was Chirac against Jean-Marie Le Pen. If the right wing does not call for a coming together behind the left-wing Republican front, let's just hope that that happens, because without that, I really don't know. Let's just hope.
I do not feel listened to. I am really sad about the results, and I hope that things will improve. I'm really angry too. I don't think that enough people came out to vote. Too many people did not pay attention to our voice.
I think that people here are extremist, and that it is Macron's fault, this rise of extremism. I'm worried about the far right because of their economics, but also the way they speak about immigration, what they say about dual nationals. I'm scared about all that. It will be an economic catastrophe and will divide the whole country.
There'll be midwives of the Second Vichy Republic. Oh, God. Dozens of French protesters rallied on the streets of Paris after an historic far-right election result. Wait, how many did they say? Did they say dozens? It's way more than dozens. I think must be at least. Okay. That's it for France. Do hope they figure things out over there. Now, let's quickly look at this. We were talking about Boeing earlier, but we got more to talk about with Boeing. As a flight going from Spain to Italy, I think? I can't remember the exact details of the flight, but at least 30 people were injured aboard a Boeing 737 flight, which hit turbulence and sent passengers flying through the air. This was from 4 hours ago. Jesus Christ. Oh my God, that guy's stuck in the fucking overhead bin. Jesus Christ. What in the fuck? Terrible turbulence on an Air Europa flight from Spain to Uruguay was sent flying, and in this viral X video shows a man's feet poking out of the overhead compartment after being hurled. One passenger reported those who did not have seatbelts flew into the air. Others disturbing evidences show the aftermath of the impact. Air Europa said the transatlantic flight carrying 325 passengers was forced to land in Natal, Brazil. Jesus Christ. Wow. Wow. I can't even imagine how you get thrown up into an overhead bin. That shit is insane. Wear your seatbelts. Yeah, no kidding. But also, investigation, please. Boeing, I have exactly negative 5% confidence in all Boeing aircrafts. Especially any of the ones made recently, and also the old ones too, because I feel like they're not maintaining the aircrafts well either. Although I guess that's technically on the airlines, but my concern is that this might actually have something to do with that sensor again, right? Which has been acting pretty erratically, causing dramatic changes in altitude suddenly when things happen externally, which has been, I feel like, exacerbating a lot of these. You're never flying again. Yeah. Oh, God. All right. Not leaving Europe quite yet. Because this also came out around the same time, about 4 hours ago. Several U.S. military bases in Europe were put on a heightened state of alert. Yeah, we have talked about how climate change is making turbulence
Several United States military
more extreme and more likely. So it could also be that. You're right. Totally right about that.
Several United States military bases in Europe remain on high alert today due to a possible terror threat. The bases, including one in Germany where the U.S. European Command is headquartered, raised the alert to the second highest level yesterday. It's unclear what triggered the heightened security, but one official told CNN the threat level has not been this high in at least a decade. European authorities have warned of a potential terror threat ahead of the Olympics
I gotta hear
later this month.
again.
Yesterday, it's unclear what triggered the heightened security, but one official told CNN the threat level has not been this high in at least a decade.
Good. That's good. I like when I hear that we have more military tensions happening abroad. That's what we need. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. We have too many stories like this. We saw U.S. troops doing missile tests in Estonia, I think yesterday. Keep seeing all of this escalations. Now, according to them, it's a terror threat. I don't know. There's I don't have any clarity on what organization issued a terror threat or what would have led to this supposed terror threat, but I just don't like what we've been doing lately with all of this military shit. Okay. Let's go to Africa. Got a couple things to talk about. First in Nigeria, and then in South Africa. Now, the first thing in Nigeria, which we have to talk about, is, well, it's quite disturbing. As according to this report, at least 32 people and many more were injured in a apparent suicide bombing which happened in Nigeria earlier today.
Welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Georgia Calvert-Smith, and tonight the death toll from 4 suicide bombings in northeastern Nigeria rises to at least 32. A funeral, hospital and wedding are amongst the sites targeted by attackers. Also, opposition parties take more than a third of ministries in South Africa's painfully haggled out new cabinet. The ANC keeps 20 of 32 posts, with its largest coalition partner, the DA, heading up 6 ministries. And staying with South Africa, scientists there do what they can to put poachers off from hunting rhinos, including introducing radioactive material into the animals' horns. But first, Nigeria's reeling in the wake of a string of suicide bombings that killed at least 32 in the northeastern town of Gwoza. Saturday's blasts targeted a wedding, a hospital and a funeral amongst the 4 sites. All of these places and gatherings where people expect compassion and solidarity. Instead, they were met with violence.
We can't even say how these people got to Gwoza. We don't know how many of them. We don't know why they did all this. With the issue of the insurgency around, we're trying to settle people, taking them back to their places, but unfortunately this incident happened.
All these stories are making me sad.
bombers, but there are fears that they mark the return of a grim tactic used by Boko Haram extremists in Borno State in the past. Sam Olakoya tells us more.
It has been several years that Nigeria saw these kinds of highly coordinated suicide bombings. The attacks evoke the frightening feeling that suicide bombers who have been on break for several years may be back again. For many Nigerians, the attacks in Goza brought back familiar memories, corpses and various human body parts blown to bits. Nigerians were treated to these chilling images before the suicide bombers took a break years back. Major cities like the capital Abuja, Kaduna, Kano, and Maiduguri still bear the scars of suicide bombings. The reign of terror had no limits and no rules. The United Nations building in Abuja, crowded markets, bus stops, mosques, churches, and media houses were among the places targeted. The question Nigerians are asking is whether the evil days of suicide bombings are back again after living under a sense of false security for...
Let us hope not. I can't hope for anything. Well, no, actually, there's a few things I can hope for as much, at least, but let's hope that they did not that this not back, right? We don't need that. There is enough shitty stuff happening in Nigeria, in all of Africa, and I feel like if that were to start, I mean, I feel like it would potentially be affecting of like the entire like surrounding region as well if it really were to start happening again, at least much of it. Okay, now let's quickly talk about South African elections. Where is it? I can't remember.
South Africa finally has a new government. A big surprise and a move that has received a lot of criticism is that the cabinet has grown from a previous 30 ministers and their deputies to 32 ministers and 43 deputy ministers. This is a move backward for the president, who during his earlier tenure had made it clear he wanted to shrink parliament to shrink expenses, announcing a cabinet heavy with ANC members, with the former opposition DA holding 6 ministerial posts and 6 deputy ministers. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the only way they could make the parliament inclusive for the GNU and its members was to add posts. Many are still unhappy at the...
Yeah. Now, they had said they were not going to add more posts, then they did it because they had to make concessions and coalition party with the Democratic Alliance of South Africa, which is something of a neoliberal sort of party. I think it's a mostly white party, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. But because the ANC lost the majority in the elections, they were forced to make a coalition with someone, and that's who they chose. Now, the lead Africa, let's go to this. In the Middle East here, as Afghanistan's Taliban government representatives have met or are meeting. I can't remember what. I think they met with the I think they met with UN representatives in Qatar. This is from earlier today. BBC News.
Now, talks today between the Taliban authorities and the international community in Qatar will center on measures to combat the production of illegal drugs and the economy. These UN-led negotiations are the first to include Taliban officials since they seized power almost 3 years ago. However, the absence of women and civil society figures at the Taliban's insistence has prompted criticism from rights groups and activists. The Taliban's spokesperson stated that they wanted to engage, but urged others not to interfere in issues they describe as internal, including women's rights. Well, let's go live now to our correspondent, Caroline Davies, who's following the talks in Doha. So, Caroline, first of all, how much of a backlash is there against the UN and other international representatives for not including Afghanistan women in these talks?
So, Catherine, we've heard from Human Rights Watch, we've heard from Amnesty International, we've also heard from various different civil society groups as well about the fact that these talks are going ahead with the Taliban authorities in the room, these representatives from lots of different countries around the world, led by the UN, but in that room there will not be civil society representatives. Now, they are having...
Yeah, and so I personally have criticisms of this, but also I can't help but be supportive of it to some degree, because the fact is, if you want the UN to be able to help Afghanistani or Afghanistani? I fucking hell, my brain just broke. I think it's Afghani. If you want them to be able to help the people of Afghanistan, that's easier. I think somehow recognizing Afghanistan in this way, right, is necessary. Now, obviously, a lot needs to be done about human rights, women's rights in Afghanistan. Although it feels like harder and harder every day to even make these sorts of criticisms of other places with the direction that America seems to want to go in. But for now, Afghanistani, I think it's got to be Afghani. Women of Afghanistan have definitely some problems as it relates to women's rights, but I do think that there needs to be some kind of a discussion, you know, for them to even feel the pressure, because if they're not part of the broader global discussion, then I feel like it's easier for them to just resign themselves to not being part of the discussion. Whereas if you are part of the discussion, then you have perhaps leverage to later on get some sort of concessions on these. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. I'm not from Afghanistan, nor do I work at the UN. In no way will I be able to change any of this, but I'm just thinking out loud about it. As I am one to do about things. Wait, what happened to you? As Sticks has a prosthetic? A good joint or something? Hips, I see. Interesting. I've lost my place. Okay, yes. Let's go a little further east to Japan to discuss what's been going on there. As recently we talked about how Japan started raising their interest rates, which was a historical move for the Bank of Japan, one of the biggest central banks in the world, who had been the first and the last to start and also stop lowering interest rates in an attempt to help boost their economy. And recently, their business sentiment has been somewhat shaky, which is adding concerns to their dilemma, supposed, on rate hikes.
The mood at Japanese firms is turning sour, and that poses a deepening dilemma for the country's central bank. Monday's closely watched Tankan survey showed sentiment at big non-manufacturers falling to +33 in June. That was down on a month before and the first drop in 2 years. The figures show service sector firms expect things to get worse in the future, with increasing costs squeezing their profit margins. Rising labour costs from a tight jobs market are adding to the pain of expensive imports. There was at least a brighter picture for manufacturers. Sentiment in the sector rose to +13, beating forecasts. It reflected a rebound in auto industry output and makers' success in passing on higher prices to customers. However, other data added to the gloom. Revised numbers showed Japan's GDP shrinking at an annual rate of 2.9% over January to March.
Oh, wow.
That was far worse than the 1.8% initially estimated. The mixed data may not help the Bank of Japan to make its next decision on rates. While the negative numbers might argue against another increase, the prospect of persistent price rises could push the other way. Japanese stocks fell back.
Jeez. Seems like there's a lot of parallels out there economically. I feel like we could just change the words Japan to a bunch of other countries, including the United States, and many of the ones that we talk about, and it would be some very similar stuff, although there's some details that are definitely different, like that 2.9% drop in GDP on a year-over-year basis. The United States still been growing, but other countries certainly have been struggling too. But yeah, it seems like capitalism's having some problems just about everywhere. Maybe we need to try some new shit. Okay. Now, time for us to go back and talk about the Middle East as it relates to Israel. First, let's start in the United States, discussing how we are involved in all of this. This is from Forbes Breaking News. 6 hours ago, they decided to clip for me a Democratic lawmaker who has decided to propose an amendment which would ban the sale and purchase of cluster munitions.
From Nevada seek recognition. I have an amendment at the desk. Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 171, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-559, offered by Ms. Titus of Nevada.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1316, the gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Titus, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this vital amendment to prohibit funds in the bill from being used to acquire, use, sell, or transfer cluster munitions in an effort to avert more widespread harm to civilians in areas contaminated with unexploded ordnance.
100%.
Cluster bombs are not winning weapons, but indiscriminate munitions that blanket large areas, contaminating land, and inflicting disproportionate harm on civilians. Cluster munitions are shells that contain dozens of smaller bomblets that disperse into the air and scatter over areas the size of several football fields. Their lack of precision targeting capabilities increases the risk of their falling into civilian areas and makes it very difficult to decontaminate those bombed areas. The extreme threat to civilians...
Seriously. And you know what's really frustrating? The House was almost completely empty when she proposed this bill. I don't think it's going to pass. I really want it to, and it should pass. If we respect human rights, if we respect international law, we should stop making, selling, acquiring, and using these things.
Arguably the greatest work of nonfiction of the 20th century.
Now she also invites another congressman onto the floor, congresswoman onto the floor. But we're not gonna watch this further, we got more to look at. Because around the same time, Rashida Tlaib came out onto the floor to have her voice heard as it relates to President Biden and his willingness to hold the Israeli government accountable.
Revise my remarks. Without objection. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the audio on January 29th of 6-year-old Palestinian girl Hind called, as she was calling the paramedics, begging them to come rescue her after the rest of her family in the car had already been killed by the Israeli military. She kept begging, come get me. Please come get me. I'm so scared.
Yeah, and we listened to this live. Well, not live. But on stream together. It was fucking harrowing. It was one of the hardest things we've had to listen to on stream, I think. Which is saying a lot, considering how much shit we've had to listen to. That is also just utterly just heartbreaking and frustrating. But, yeah, this is... Great question, Rashida.
Please come. No one was able to reach the car for 12 days when her decomposing body was found alongside the bodies of 5 of her family members. The bodies of 2 Palestinian Red Crescent Society workers, missing since the day of her call when they were dispatched to rescue her, were discovered in the ambulance just feet away. And Madam Speaker, I'm here to talk about it because a new forensic analysis found that the Israeli military fired not 1, not 2, not a dozen, not 20, 355 tank bullets at the car that Hind was in. And the tank was so close that the Israeli soldiers would have had a clear view of Hind in the car. 6 months later, the State Department and President Biden has yet to hold the Israeli government accountable for these executions. So, Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to submit into the congressional record a forensic report.
I submit it. I'd submit it. For fuck's sake. Okay. Now, I thought this was a video we should probably watch. It's very frustrating. To me, it will probably frustrate you as well. But we have not been watching a lot of footage of the protests that have still been going on in the streets. As colleges and universities are shut down for the summer. And I do think we need to look at this. This is from Status Quo News from 5 hours ago. Quote unquote, get the fuck down. Pro-Palestinian protesters brutalized by the New York Police Department.
Let's go! Move back! Move back! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Move it! Move it! Let's go! Let's go! Here we go, sir! Let's go! Move it! Move it!
under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct. If you do not cooperate and accompany the arresting officer to the prisoner transport vehicle, or if you resist arrest, you may be charged with additional crimes. Since you have refused to disperse, you will be placed under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct.
Taxpayers are paying for this.
If you do not cooperate and accompany the arresting officer to the prisoner transport vehicle, or if you resist arrest, you may be charged with additional crimes.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What in the actual fuck did that guy even do? Jesus Christ.
Guys, hold the line. Back up. Back up. Back up. I don't back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. Hold that line on that side.
By the way, I think we recently talked about, or maybe not recently, but like a few months ago, we talked about how what these three comms are doing right now, putting this man on his chest and then kneeling on it, is potentially fatal.
Back up. Back up.
I'm ordering you to go back on the sidewalk now. If you do so voluntarily, no charge. Hey guys, just so you know,
All right, so they have SRG on the bikes, blocking the road here. Not just blocking the road, they are actually blocking the sidewalk too. They are not letting anybody go past this point.
Nobody's coming up this way.
Are you guys blocking the sidewalk? That's illegal.
All right.
The sidewalk. That's illegal.
All of a sudden, you're worried about the law. Normally, you guys are careless.
Wow, what a piece of shit.
Blocking the roads, blocking the sidewalks, not letting delivery guys through, not
Does that
letting
even
the
mean?
public go through.
Free speech is breaking the law. What in the fuck?
There we go. Pulling some arrests here.
Jack.
And you won't get arrested.
I love how this guy's got his arms out, blocking two cops, like keeping the cops back. It's real weird. They don't even seem completely aware of what they're even like where they are. What is the point of having this many cops? What is the fucking point? I wonder how much this costs per hour. This sort of suppression. What do you think, chat? I think $2,000 an hour, more than that probably. $5,000 an hour. Probably more than that. How many cops are out here right now? Okay, so yeah, that's the NYPD just running around chasing protesters down, tackling them to the ground. Wait a second. Hold on, we have to go back. Does this guy not look like Steph Curry right here? What the fuck is happening? Okay, it's probably not Steph Curry, but he looks like Steph Curry. He's too short to be Steph Curry. Sorry, I got distracted, chat. Okay. Now let's look at a different protest. This one is in Jerusalem, where scuffles occurred. And by scuffles, what AP actually means is that the Israeli police went in and repressed, or at least attempted to repress, all the ultra-Orthodox men who came out to protest the recent ruling, which now forces all of them to enlist in the Israeli army. I shouldn't be shocked that a country that's currently committing probable genocide according to the ICGA is also running down literal 6- and 7-year-old children in their own streets with water cannons. But it's still that image of that kid standing down a frickin' water cannon is absolutely, it's gonna be burned in my brain for potentially forever, I think. Steph is only 6'2". He's short for the NBA. But, I mean, that crowd, like, he was average height for that crowd, which I assume isn't 6'2". I mean, it would be weird if an entire crowd's average height was 6'2". But he was, like, right there in the middle. It's possible, I suppose, but seems unlikely. Okay. So we got something to talk about here. This is the last thing we are going to be discussing, although we have a few different reports to discuss. But Israel has now released some, I think it's like 50 or 60, might be a little bit less, but they've released some number of Palestinian detainees who have been in Israeli military detention for who knows how long. Could be even longer than 8 months. I think most of them are post October 7th detainees. Let's go to this one first. This is from CBS News.
And new this morning, we are following reports Israel has released dozens of Palestinians it detained from Gaza, including the director of the enclave's main hospital. This comes as tensions are ratcheting up on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Israel says a Hezbollah drone attack in the Golan Heights injured at least 18 of its soldiers. One of those injuries is considered serious. The U.S. has warned the Hezbollah militant group that it should not count on America or anyone else from holding Israeli leaders back if they decide to execute plans for an offensive into Lebanon. Meanwhile, ultra-Orthodox Jewish protesters clashed with police in Jerusalem yesterday.
I forgot they did all this. You know what? Hold on. Just...
In fact, we've just seen the most bitter sort of recriminations and accusations all across the political spectrum. You have the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, now ordering an inquiry into how this decision could have been made. You have the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, accusing the government of, quote, lawlessness and recklessness behind this decision.
Oh,
And then
now
you
it's
have
lawless?
Ishmael Ben
Oh, now that they let the illegally detained the civilians, now it's lawless. Okay,
who is the
interesting.
ultra-far right-wing minister here in Israel, who is responsible for internal security, accusing the Shin Bet, the internal security service, of essentially incompetence for this move. Now, all of this really just underscores how tense the political situation.
Okay, now we have more to talk about with this, but I'm done with CBS. I'm just so sick of CBS. One of my least favorite of all of the news channels. I mean, of the ones that we at least listen to on the reg around here. But yeah, let's get more into this. This is from the Guardian News. According to them, this freed Gaza hospital director is now accusing Israel of torture, not just of himself, but of all the other prisoners as well. The head of the Gaza Strip's biggest hospital has been freed and returned to Gaza after being detained in Israeli prisons and facilities without charge for 7 months. Mohammed Abu Salmiya, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital, has accused Israel of torturing him and other people during his detention. We were subjected to severe torture. My middle finger was broken.
وتم
Was
يعني
repeatedly
أكثر من مرة
subjected to
التعرض
hitting
لي
on the head,
بضرب في الرأس ونزول الدم
caused bleeding
أكثر من
multiple
مرة. هناك
times.
تعذيب شبه يومي كان في يعني في السجون
There's almost
الإسرائيلية.
daily torture
يعني
in
عندما
the
يتم
Israeli
اقتحام
prisons when
يعني
prisoner
يتم
cells are
اقتحام
raided
غرف
daily.
السجناء يوميا ويتم الاعتداء عليهم
They were
بالضرب
severely
المبرح
beaten every
يوميا.
day as well.
هذا الكلام نقوله ونحن
We say this with
متأكدون منه
full certainty,
تماما
and we
وعشناه
lived through
بكل
it with
مرارة.
great bitterness. Abu Salmiya said medical staff at different facilities where he was held had taken abuse, and that some detainees had limbs amputated because of poor medical care. There was no immediate response from the Israeli prison service. Abu Salmiya was detained when Israeli forces outraided Al-Shifa in November, after alleging that Hamas had created an elaborate command and control center inside the medical complex. Instead, if you all recall, what was found was a calendar revealing a schedule for doctors and nurses, and 2 guns. Pretty sure there's more guns in Texas hospitals than that hospital. Or at least were, until Israel destroyed it. Never showed any proof of the tunnels. And yeah. Yet that guy was held in detention for 7 months and tortured. This is the last video. I just realized we're on the fucking last video already. Good God, how did this happen? I think this is maybe the same footage of him just greeting his family. It's a happy day that we have been released from the Israeli occupation detention. We are a group of colleagues working in the health ministry and other detainees who were released with us today, around 50. We left behind many detainees, tens of thousands of detainees who have been mistreated, who have been physically and psychologically tortured, that no Palestinian prisoner has been subjected to since the 1948 Nakba catastrophe. If that's true, tens of thousands of prisoners, that would at least explain where some of the children have gone, I think. Because that would be my guess. There's probably a bunch of children in there as well. Good God. Sorry, chat. I don't have an uplifting video to end with today. Well, we made it through another one. It was long and arduous, but thankfully we had each other to get through it. Well, that's it for me. Till I see you next. We stay classy, Galactic Stream Nation. Can't forget this. These are your galactic patrons. Gabby, Goth Dogs, Aaron W, Eddie, PB, Robot Cat, Morbius Dragon, The Anti-Corporatist, Owen, Nadia, Mrs. Jen, Omega Star, Pitchfork Dragon, Vincent Morales, and Donald James X. That's right. All these people right here have decided to make the right choice. Become producers of this little show which you just enjoyed. You too can do the same and gain access to sweet, sweet space benefits. Just a few dollars a month. Write that down. Couldn't do it without them.
I made a huge tiny mistake.